Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. It's a short week for me because I'm going to Nebraska for the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference in a couple days. But we're going to get into some UFOs tonight. Scientist, anthropologist Maya Cowan is here. She's a good BC kid living in New York. Yeah. And we are going to find out what brings her into the UFO world and into the SCU and many other projects that she's working on. I'm excited about this one. Dirty Filth is here. He will draw up another great cartoon. Him and I celebrating the Oilers kicking ass tonight in game one of their series against those stinking no good, rotten, ought to be tossed out of the NHL Los Angeles Kings. Oh, yeah. Hockey playoffs is here, people. And I'm ready to rumble. We got all of you here as well, which is awesome. We got Tim Mothman in his goatee in the gold medal position. Laura Lobbs with a silver. Race fan with a bronze medal tonight. Hi, Andrew the trucker. See you in Nebraska, my friend. Deidre, how are you? SJ, James Horn, Buckethead, my man. How are you? Buckethead will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Let's continue on with Chris 716, Michael Morris, Dino Bravo, Stephanie, Kenny Blankenship, and Bar Madison. Good to see you all. Hi, Brown Dwarf and Les Paul Holland strumming away in Australia. We love you, my man. Eternity Eternal, White Walkers, Mr. Cowley, Vash the Impaler. Always a pleasure to have all of you here. Hi, Cosmic Joe, Chris, Woo Child. How you doing, my man? Woo Child will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio if you don't mind. To the right of the studio. Sasquatch Guy, thanks for coming on in. Mama Catherine. Mwah! I love you, Mama Catherine. Thank you for the lovely text messages this morning. You are the best. Absolute best. T-Bone, my man. Where were you last week? Oh, you had a bad virus. Terrible. Paul Demon. Melvin. How you guys doing? There's purple-haired Pixie Lara. Thank you for coming on in. Stargazer. Deer Slayer. Good to see you both. And there's Ozzy. Thank you for joining us. And Belenia, my man. Thomas Rock, John Lamb, Nikki in Seattle. Good to see you all. Paramarv, thank you for joining us as we continue on with our roll call here. River Morris and JBD, thank you for joining us. And Aloha Dave, thank you for joining us. Who else is here? Operation Shutdown. Good to see you again. As we scroll on down, there is S. Vermet, Super Crazy, and Gamer Quest. Thank you all for coming on in. Phyllis Mouche Perry and Skip DeMalou, good morning to you over in wherever the hell you are. Somewhere in Europe. One of those countries. Phil the Stalker, Al Garay over on Twitch, bench pressing 375 pounds, 58 times tonight. Good to have you here. All right, let's continue on with our roll call here. And who's next on our list? Mike Rivers, good to see you. Foxy Joe. Foxy. Oh, yeah. Cryptid Search, welcome to SOR Chat. Stargazer. Bialza Brad has a devil put aside for me. Oh, yeah. Vanessa, thank you for coming on in. Luscious Jules and Big Dog, thank you for kicking off the super chat tonight. Gonna miss you in Reno, my friend. Wish you were coming on in, but I understand. But thank you for the lovely support on SOR with that super chat. And let's continue on here. Gizmo, my man, thanks for coming on in. And CS, good to see you. Canna Chef Chris, thank you for coming on in. Let's get the radio side started. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We are getting into UFOs and anthropology. Scientist Maya Cowan is here tonight to go with it. As Bill WD-40 has entered the chat room, he is currently lubing us up for tonight's show because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. You don't want any of that rigidness. It never feels good. Dry and rigid. So Bill WD-40 currently lubing us up as we speak. Thank you, Bill. Commonwealth Andrew, good morning to you. Hi, Noble Patrick. And who else is here? Susan Alloway, good to see you. And we got 30 seconds. Let's see what else we can fit in here. And we're caught up on people. Hi, Chris. Teen, good to see you. All right. Super Chat is open. The store on our website is open, spacedoutradio.com. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. You can wear our stuff out in public. Debster, thank you for that lovely super chat. Appreciate it. Throw those horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got an amazing show for you tonight. UFOs, anthropology, and the science behind it all. Maya Cowan is here from Binghamton University, and we are going to find out all about this very, very soon. Then in hour number 3, Steve Stockton from Among the Missing comes on in for another spooky story. Then it's UFO Court. Nicole Sackage filling in for I don't want to say vacationing. Let's just say on assignment, Courtney Marcassani tonight, who unfortunately can't be with us due to personal matters tonight. All right, let's continue on, shall we? Let's get this thing going. Who's ready to put this from first gear to sixth gear right off the bat? I know I am, so let's just do it. Maya Cowan is an anthropologist currently completing her PhD dissertation on the current era of UAP science at Binghamton University. She is a member of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies and the Society for UAP Studies Citizen Science Working Group. She also works for Investigate the Unknown, Project Nanu, on the data science team. In her spare time, if she actually has any after all that, she enjoys playing with her dog, Cherry, running, roller skating, and playing music. And by the way, she is a Vancouver Canucks fan. You know, yeah, I love the Canucks too. I'm wearing my Edmonton Oilers hat because they're my number one team, but my Canucks are number 1A. All right, so she is a Canucks fan. We'll just get that out there right now. And what the hell? In June 2024, she did a study called Anthropology and UAP, Questions of Humanity, Culture, and the Unknown. And we're going to get into that as well. So let's check it on out. Maya Cowan, good BC kid. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Yeah, please, to your audience, forgive me for my Canucks fandom, but, you know, you endorse them as well. So hopefully we're okay there.
Now, I got to ask you, because you are from a small town called Hope, British Columbia, which is right before the Fraser Canyon, to come up to my place. And you know what? From your place, once you get on Highway 1, From your place to my place is exactly 1, 2, 3, 3 turns. 3 turns. You only got to put your signal on 3 times, you know? So my question to you is, being from Hope, how many, let me rephrase this. How sick and tired are you of talking about First Blood with Sylvester Stallone?
Oh my God. I didn't know I was going to be asked about that, but I should have been prepared. Oh boy, I have so many thoughts about First Blood. First of all, why has my hometown put up not 1, but 2 statues at this point of Rambo First Blood? I get it. I mean, I get why. Because there's nothing else going for it. But also, it's a funny thing because it's like both, since I've moved to the US, it's the only tangible thing that Americans have that could possibly ever help you understand where I'm from is like when I say, oh yeah, it's the town where Rambo First Blood is filmed, but then also being from there, it's like, I can't even watch that movie without just looking and saying, oh yeah, I know that place and I know that place and I know that place.
Me too.
I will also say I have a funny story about Rambo First Blood. Well, kind of. I don't know. It's probably not that funny, but I used to work at a Chinese restaurant in Hope, BC called the Canyon, and it's in the same plaza where, like, if you remember Rambo First Blood, and if you don't remember Rambo First Blood, like, I don't know what's the matter with you, but you remember, like, the gas station that they blew up? Well, they
Yes.
really blew up a gas station in Hope, BC. And what they built on top of there is just like a normal shopping plaza. But I used to work in a restaurant in that plaza as a server when I was a teenager. And people would come in all the time and they would say, oh, like, what do you know about Rambo First Blood? Because that's like the only reason that people want to visit Hope, right? And so all the time I'd be like, oh, you really want to know like something about Rambo First Blood? Well, this restaurant is built on top of the gas station that they blew up. And I feel like it's not a secret, but people would always give me a big tip when I told them that.
You know what my biggest memory of Hope is? When I was 17 years old playing rep hockey in Abbotsford.
Right.
Right. We go into Hope one night and there's people, you got to understand, there's not a lot to do in Hope. Okay.
Practically nothing at all.
They've got about at least 150, 200 people in the stands watching, a bunch of 17-year-olds play hockey. And what happens after the game? We brawl in the dressing room hallway. We brawled. And we had to get a police escort out of the rink to get us out of the rink. So we got showered up. Everybody packed their gear. We had to get a police escort out of the rink because our bus was being vandalized by them damn Hope people. So that is an awesome memory of Hope. Yeah, for me at least.
Oh, that is so funny. I can't say I was ever probably among the crowd that would have been in the stands or outside vandalizing the opposing team's tour bus, but that is so Hope.
Yes. Oh,
incredibly, yeah.
I loved every minute of it. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. We can reminisce about British Columbia all day long or all night long here.
Yeah, really could.
We do have to get into some UFOs here. How does a young lady from Hope, which happens to be a UFO and Sasquatch hotbed, how do you get into UFOs?
So, well, Sasquatch, that's a whole other question because Hope is absolutely a Sasquatch hotspot. I mean, the word Sasquatch comes from the Halkomelem word. I believe it's pronounced Sasquatch, and Halkomelem is the language that is spoken in Hope traditionally. But aside from Sasquatch, UFOs, how did I get into that? I literally don't remember a time I wasn't involved in it. And so that's kind of a weird thing for me. It wasn't something I came across later in life. It wasn't something that I came across like after I had an experience, although I have had a couple of different experiences. It was something that for me, I feel like I've known about it my entire life. Like it was something that my grandfather was so immersed in. And he was like, my grandfather was a really, yeah, quite a man. He was quite a character, you could say, but he was really like a super experiencer of the phenomenon. I would say probably multiple phenomena, but yeah, he was so interested in that topic. And I remember like being a little kid and having him show me. And to be honest, I can't remember if I was supposed to be watching these documentaries or if maybe I just snuck in to like watch these documentaries after I was supposed to be in bed, because that's something I did a lot as a little kid, was sneak in to like watch things in the living room that I wasn't supposed to be watching. So that's very, very much a possibility. But regardless, my grandfather would show my family these documentaries about UFOs and everything that was going on, and aliens and extraterrestrials and all of that. And so it was something that I was exposed to from a really young age. And it really, like, it just resonated with me, and it always stuck with me. And it was always like, it was never something I really felt particularly skeptical about. It felt very real to me, I guess, especially because I knew people who were experiencers. And so that, I think with a lot of things in life, like people seem to put this extra skepticism onto UFOs, but there's a lot of things in life that people are experiencers of and people never question it. And so I guess that was kind of like where I kind of was with UFOs. Like I just never really questioned it. I always believed in the phenomenon. Sorry, I just got distracted by seeing a comment that said, I heard the cops are dirty and hope Rambo said so. Yes, they are. Rambo was right. Anyway, regardless, I'll try to not look at the screen anymore. Anyway, yeah, no, it was just something I've always been interested in, and never really like had a moment where I was like particularly skeptical. It's, yeah, like, what is there to be skeptical of? People see these things, they're there, like they are there, they're a thing. What? Yeah, so I guess that's my ultimate background with it.
I love it.
That was a bit of a rant, but
No, I thought it was a very awesome answer. Very simplistic, easy for people to listen to, but getting to the Sasquatch in that area for a second, Ruby Creek, which is just a few kilometers away.
Oh my
That
God.
place is nut bar for Sasquatch. Some of the greatest legends in British Columbia come from Ruby Creek. And for people who understand Bigfoot in our area, everybody knows Harrison Hot Springs. Well, Ruby Creek is just east of Harrison Hot Springs. And this area is crazy, where the Bigfoot literally come off the mountains and they will be staring in people's windows. This is where the stories of taking pies off the windowsills comes from. And there's some amazing encounters in Ruby Creek. So, I mean, you living right around the corner from that. I mean, that's just crazy. I will say this though. Did you know I've had 2 weird Sasquatch incidents in Yale?
I'm not at all surprised. I didn't know that, but I'm not at all surprised. I mean, that's to me, like, obviously there are sightings all over North America, but to me, being from there, I always think that's where Sasquatch is really from.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you're pulling into Yale, and there is that rest stop right on the right-hand side before town.
I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
I just got off a plane from Vancouver. I was in San Francisco for UFO Con, and I was talking on the phone to Nicole Sackage, one of our intrepid UFO researchers around here. And it was like 2:30 in the morning. And I stop at the rest stop, and I'm talking to her on the phone because it's really the last stop before you lose cell phone service, before you hit the tunnel there.
Yeah.
And I watched this shadow of a Sasquatch, just a shadow, walk right across the highway. It wasn't physical, wasn't anything. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, Nicole, what the hell did I just see? And it was pretty amazing. And then about a year later, same type of incident, I heard tree knocking up above.
That's pretty spooky.
Yeah. It was crazy.
I don't know. I feel like there are different theories about Sasquatch and his friendliness. And I think like on the island, I don't know, this is just what I've heard is like on the island, Vancouver Island, I guess, for those who aren't from British Columbia. On Vancouver Island, I feel like I've heard more stories about him being more friendly, but being from the Fraser Valley, I feel like I've heard more stories about him as something of a bit of a mysterious, if not slightly menacing figure. So I would be terrified.
Well, when next time you come home to British Columbia, you just drive the canyon up, and I will take you out to our hot spot where we found
Absolutely.
prints, where we've been chased out of the forest.
Absolutely going to take you up on. So yeah, sounds like maybe more of a quintessential Fraser
Good.
Valley experience.
Let's head up back over to UFOs a second. You
Totally.
went. What was the response when you did your dissertation on UFOs?
From like people in academia or from my
Yes,
family or okay.
from academia.
Yeah, so I would say so it was okay. I guess to backtrack a little bit, before I was doing my dissertation on UFOs, I was doing this like totally unrelated research project where I was looking at specifically pension funds in Canada. And, maybe people have opinions about that, but I was looking at Canada Pension Plan and Ontario Teachers Pension Plan and the way that like they invest in ESG sort of like types of funds for people's social welfare good. And like it was incredibly boring. So forget about that. But basically because of COVID, like I started my PhD just before COVID. And then during COVID, like, everything was shut down and I couldn't really like do my research that well. And so I was kind of at a place where I was like, I think I need to switch projects. But the thing that has actually been in my mind for probably like 3 years now as I was just looking at all of this science that's now being done in academia about UFOs. And I was thinking, like, why why hasn't there been any anthropology or like science and technology studies sort of research done on this? And I was thinking because my research before it wasn't necessarily like into science per se, but it was very much about like the way that expertise forms around a specific topic. And so I was thinking like that's totally, all of this reading that I've done about this, all of this research that I've done about this, it could really be applicable to this topic. And I was thinking, to be honest, I had this thought where I was like, surely somebody must be studying this already, right? Because this is such a good topic. Like somebody must have already, be writing a book about this and I just don't know about it or something. And then I kind of did a little bit more background research and I found out that, there are anthropologists who are studying this. There's a couple of them, but nobody was really doing the project that I wanted to do, which is like an ethnography, like, more of like a field study about, what is really going on here with the science around this and how this is forming as like a real academic discipline and a real sort of scientific paradigm, really, in a way that hasn't really been allowed before because of stigma. And so what happened, I guess, is that I remember I was super nervous and I remember talking to several of my friends and I was like, there's no way my supervisor is going to go for this. Like, he's going to be so skeptical and like, there's no way he's going to let me switch my topic to this. But I scheduled a meeting with him and I basically said like, hey, Doug, I'd love to switch my topic. I think like I'm at a point where I haven't really gotten anywhere, but I'd love to pitch this new idea to you. And then I remember like how I start. Your audience is going to hate me for saying this. Well, maybe, I don't know. I just assume. I remember I started my pitch because like, how can you not in the space of UFOs start your pitch with like, do you remember back in 2017 when the New York Times released these videos from the Pentagon and and all that stuff? So that was how I started my pitch with like, maybe, this isn't a topic we're studying. And he was like, and I remember he listened to my whole pitch of like why I thought that UAP science would be like a really interesting area of research. And I remember he was kind of like, yeah, I'm not quite sold on those videos, but like, I think you're totally right. This is a brilliant area for research. And I was like, whew. And I totally, I didn't expect it to fly, to be honest, just because of like, I think the stigma that we've all come to expect, right? Like, not just academics, but experiencers and everybody, right? Like, you just come to expect this stigma. And so I was really surprised, I guess, when my supervisor really accepted that as like, actually, yeah, I think that is a really, really interesting topic of study. And then the rest of my committee, well, yeah. So I guess the rest of my committee, I have one committee member who I would say like he's just pretty, up for anything. Like he was totally willing to study that, like to go on this journey with me, I should say. And then I gained another committee member who I totally didn't expect, who is he's actually a geneticist, Dr. Emery, in our anthropology department. And he wanted to be on my committee just because he's super interested in the phenomenon. And like, that was a sort of pre-existing interest of his. And so he was like excited to hear about a student in our department who was studying it seriously. So yeah, so my committee has loved it. They've been amazing. Academia in general, I'm not so sure. Like I think I mentioned this to you before. I just did a 3-minute thesis competition in my university, which for those of you who don't know, 3-minute thesis is like this very particular graduate school thing where it's like graduate students have 3 minutes to pitch their research and to talk about like, this is what my research is, and here's what it does, and whatever, and blah, blah, blah. Here's the implications of my research. And, and I totally didn't expect to be accepted, but I think it was because I used the term UAP in my title. Nobody knew what I was talking about. So they accepted it and they were like, that's so interesting. What are you talking about? And I was like, UFOs, basically, more or less. But yeah, so I don't, to be honest, I don't totally know what the rest of academia thinks about it. I've done a talk to my department, and I think that I think some people were really interested, and I think some people were a bit skeptical. And I don't know. I suppose I'm at a point right now where I was just about ready to quit my PhD anyway during COVID, like a lot of people were. So, like, bring it on.
But the thing is, you're tackling something that could potentially be a vast different advancement in the scientific community. 90 seconds or less. I mean, do you think that learning about this is going to give you a fast start, that if it ever is declared that we are not alone in the universe, or we have alien technology, that this is going to be a benefit to you?
Okay. So I've said this as a joke probably 100 times, but it's actually not a joke. And here's why. So in anthropology, especially sociocultural anthropology, like even when you first start out, I think there is like this assignment that students often get that's like, pretend you're an anthropologist from Mars. So like anthropology, right? Like basically we're describing other cultures. And so we often give out this assignment to students. And I've done it myself when I've taught intro to anthropology. You give out this assignment to students that's like, pretend you're a Martian who came to Earth, and you're just describing, what Earthlings are like from this totally foreign perspective. And like, you have no idea what's going on. And like, you might see us do things like pay for groceries or like put on our clothes in the morning. And that might be just totally foreign. So there's that. But then I feel like probably secretly every sociocultural anthropologist's dream is that if the alien civilization came to Earth and revealed themselves, then they would get to write the ethnography of what the alien culture is. So I'm mostly joking, but also I'm kind of not joking.
Hey, don't joke about that. That's could kind of happen. It could happen.
But if it happened, I would love to be the anthropologist who got to write that.
Give me 1 second. Anthropologist Maya Cowan is here on Spaced Out Radio tonight. UFO studies. What's she learning? Where are we going with this topic from an educational background? On Spaced Out Radio next. All right, we're clear. That was a fun half hour.
I didn't even realize that it had gotten to a half hour, to be honest. I was just having a great time talking.
Oh, yeah. And Dirty Filth, my fellow Oilers fan in Edmonton, that's looking pretty cool here. He's our resident cartoonist.
That's rad.
Yes.
To be clear, also, I'm not like, I didn't say this earlier when we were talking, but I would say, similar to you saying Canucks are like your number 2 team, Oilers are my number 2 team, which is to say I frequently go to the Oilers as my team because the Canucks usually don't do that well.
Yes. Yes, it's true. It's very true.
Yeah.
I don't know. They were pretty good a little while. I guess not a couple years ago. I was when they had the Sedines and whatnot. They were steamrolling the West pretty good, and they're having a decent season now. But I lived in Vancouver, and as an Oilers fan in Vancouver, when they were constantly making the playoffs, it was slightly painful.
Yeah. Well, okay. I was, I lived in Hope in 2011, and I think we all remember what happened in 2011, except for probably those on the chat who don't remember what happened in 2011. But
oh, what a goal! What a goal by Draisaitl. Sorry, 5-2. 5-2.
What the hell, Dave? 5-2 for Edmonton or the bad guys?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No.
The bad guys.
I don't watch them.
Oilers
have only been doing good because I stopped watching hockey like 2 years ago.
You've gone to at least 3 Oilers games this year.
It sort of counts.
There
were wins, but
there's a difference between watching hockey and attending hockey.
Hey, look at this.
4 games.
Look at this BS I'm about to put on the screen here.
Oh.
What the hell is that? What the hell is that? Hey, Ginger
Aliens
Turtle.
need to give that guy LeBron.
Go Leafs, go! Come on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
This is where I start my cheer. 67.
Dave.
Yes, the ferret. I meant the riot in 2011 Vancouver. That's what I meant by 2011.
Yeah.
My adopted dad's a Leafs fan. I never hear the end of it, Dave.
Oh.
I know when they win. Trust me.
It's funny. I lived in Kingston, Ontario for 3 years, and I can't figure out what Ontario thinks about hockey. Like, it's like they hate the Leafs, they love the Leafs, they hate the Sens. I think universally, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a funny thing living in Ontario with the hockey, whereas BC, I think, for the most part, it's pretty much we're all just fair weather Canucks fans.
David M. Lafleur, 5-2 Edmonton, thank you. And by the way, we're going to call you Guy around here because you can't have the last name Lafleur and not be called Guy around here. Can't. True story. Back in, 2005, I was at a golf tournament and they had a bunch of hockey stars there. I got to try on the Pocket Rockets Stanley Cup ring from the Habs. Yeah.
That's very exciting.
That was pretty cool. Steve Franchise, how you doing? Welcome back. Who else is here? Let's see. Yeah. S for Bet, living in Ottawa, so I'm Sens fan, but cheering for Oilers. Love you, Scott Vermette. That's the way it gets done right there. Big thank you to Big Dog Deb Uni and T-Bone and CS for the amazing super chats tonight. It's a great way to support what we do. We have 63 people listening on X tonight. If you don't mind, give us a follow. And if you're on YouTube, hit subscribe button, ring that bell. We'd greatly appreciate it. Sweet Robbie G. That is not a nice comment. It's still NBA season in the U.S. Enough hockey talk. We're going to drop the gloves, Robbie G, in Reno. We're going to drop the gloves. Yeah. Loser has to shave their beard. Speed Romans, how you doing? Good to see you guys. We're having a great time tonight. This is a lot of fun. Are you having fun yet, Maya?
No, I'm having so much fun. Yes, I really am. I was just looking on YouTube because but then I realized it's the same comments that I can see either way. So
Yes. All right. I believe it is now. Let's see. We're going to get an update here. Might be 6-2 now. Hold on. We're going to hit the refresh here. God, I need to get cable in the studio here for this time of year. Here we go, everybody. We're going to get going right now. Here we go with the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. I'm the man who wears a lot of tinfoil every day of the week. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives. We're on every major podcast network and on youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Maya Cowan is here. She's an anthropologist with Binghamton University in New York. We're having a great time talking about UFOs and hockey, but we're skipping the hockey chat this half hour. We're going to get more into UFOs because that's what you're tuned into, Leaf fans. 67. Did I say that? 67. Oh, I may have done that. I apologize. I may have done it twice. I apologize even more. Maya, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio.
thank you very much.
All right. You've done a dissertation on UAP. The one thing that you said in the last half hour that really kind of hit me was how many people didn't know in your university classes what UAP are. Was that a little surprising to you, considering that it had been in the news? You know, it's becoming more popular. It is a science that we may not know very much about as of right now, that could take really do another industrial revolution type of scientific study.
Yeah, I'd love to come back to the fact that you just said that it could do another industrial revolution, because I totally agree. And I think that that's one of the overlooked sort of subjects here. But so yes and no, because I think what I guess I've managed to do for myself, which I feel like is a great privilege, is just surround myself with people who all know what I'm talking about when I talk about any of this stuff, right? So UFO, UAP, like I love having so many friends who are just like immersed in this and in this community, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. But in a way, yeah, I was absolutely super surprised that, like I could be talking to a room of like 50 or more people in academia. And in my presentation, I think I started off with like the term, like I said, like, has anybody actually heard the term UAP before? And like one person raised their hands. And it's like, do you people not read the news? I would think that you would read the news, but then again, when I think about it, I guess like the term UFO is typically what does get used in the news. And I think that there's good reason for that on a couple different sides, but mostly because, like UAP isn't the term that people generally engage with this topic under, right? So most people just know it as UFO, and that's totally fine. I mean, like I think I mentioned to you, like UAP is the term that I tend to use because it's the term that in general, although not universally, but in general, more researchers tend to use the term UAP just because it's like, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's like, on one hand, nobody's heard of the term UAP, but on the other hand, that also kind of, I think, at least in my research, I found this. And so I imagine this is true for other UAP researchers as well, although I haven't specifically had a chance to ask a lot of them that yet explicitly. It's something I do plan to ask it explicitly. But for my research, like it almost kind of like allows you to fly under the radar a little bit, because like if you just tell people, oh, I'm doing research on UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, like a lot of people don't know what you're talking about. And so that's, not a great thing, but it's also sometimes it can kind of be a good thing when you think about the stigma that is typically applied to UAP research, right? And just like how much stigma there has been done on UAP research, UFO research, whatever you want to call it. Like you think about things like basically the inquest of John Mack and how he was basically super targeted for just like more or less taking experiencers seriously on their own terms. And to me, as an anthropologist, also that kind of inquiry is just frankly a little bit appalling, because that's one of the main things that we try to do in anthropology, is to take people seriously on their own terms and not to apply judgments to them. And so just to see how widely that is a practice in academia has been, it's a little bit alarming, but it's also encouraging to see how that has been a little bit less of a thing recently. And I do think that part of that is using the term UAP. And I do think part of that, frankly, to be honest, is just that so few people really understand what that means. Like I said, like I don't think I would have been accepted into this general university-wide thing if I had said like, I'm studying UFO science, but that's just, I don't know.
Take me through the course, because there's so much about this subject that you have personally looked into. You've looked into the science and technology of what these craft are doing, but more so you are looking into things about the experiencer, the experiences people are having. How does their mind tick? How does it work? Why is this concerning? If it truly is something happening and not just some sort of mind trick that people are having. I mean, what have you noticed and what have you learned in your short time researching this?
Right. Okay. So I guess a couple things. I don't know if we already said this already, but I am teaching a course for the Society of UAP Studies that starts at like beginning to mid-June. That's about the anthropology of UAP, and it's sort of just like a general look into anthropological perspectives on UAP. So if anybody's interested in that, please sign up. It's going to be a lot of fun. I promise you. You can look at rate my profs. I'm a fun prof. I'm not even a prof here. Just like really, I think it's just going to be a fun opportunity to chat about the different perspectives. And the course in general so it's kind of like a little bit of like an introduction to anthropology for people who aren't really familiar with that perspective. And then we talk about ontology and what ontology really means from an anthropological perspective, because there's obviously different academic disciplines kind of have their different perspectives on like what ontology means. And the other thing is that obviously like in the UFO world, we hear a lot about ontological shock. And from what I hear is like on an individual perspective, ontological shock is incredibly real. Like I've heard so many just like, well, earth shattering, that's basically a synonym for ontological shock, right? Like it's something that just really shakes up your entire view of the world. And I know so many people who've gone through that perspective, but at the same time, going through an ontological shock really depends on what your ontology was to begin with. And ontology from an anthropological perspective basically means like your worldview, right? Like how you were grown up to know and to experience the world and to understand different parts of the world. And so I guess like even just using myself as an example, like having grown up in the sort of UFO world and knowing lots of UFO experiencers, like even when I actually did have like the first UFO experience that I can recount, I was like 9 years old. It was kind of scary to me, but it wasn't really like ontological shock to me because I kind of could already incorporate that into my worldview, I guess, in a way. And so part of the course is like looking at different ontologies that already do incorporate some kind of non-human intelligence or some kind of UFO or extraterrestrial or like sky beings or, like those kinds of things. So that's part of it as well, is just looking at these different worldviews that do already exist, that do incorporate this. And then part of it is looking kind of through an anthropological lens at different topics like religion and science, and how all of these things are kind of culturally mediated, right? Like whether we look at UFOs as a religion, for example, really depends on kind of like our own cultural definition of what actually is a religion, although that might be hard to kind of parse if you haven't really thought about it, because we have our definition of what is a religion, but of course what is a religion to us depends on what we grew up believing is a religion versus what is religion versus what is science versus what is just a fact versus versus what is a UFO, all of these different things. So that's a big part of it as well. And then as well, just looking at different parts of the world and how UFO experiences are kind of experienced in Chile, for example, versus United States. And then as well, looking at the Indigenous studies perspective on UAP research and SETI research. And yeah, so that's kind of just the general scope of the course. And then I can't remember what the other question that you asked was.
Oh, I thought you answered it perfectly.
Oh,
as you sit here and you take this study and you see how it kind of has a metamorphosis to it. And I think that's probably the first time I've ever used the word metamorphosis on this show. So I'm pretty proud of myself right now.
Right on.
I'm very curious about how do you stay very scientifically unabashed or with your scientific skepticism, which I think is needed, and going into experiences with people who've had or claim to have the ultimate experience. And how do you, being an experiencer or an eyewitness yourself, how do you control that excitement from the awesomeness of that story, and then go put your scientific hat on and think, okay, now let's do the study behind this?
That is a really good question. It's one I've never been asked before. But I guess here's the thing, like with anthropology, and sorry, would you mind if I, like, forgive me if I get into like a little bit of like the technical definitions of terms within anthropology to answer this question?
Please do.
Okay, perfect. So I guess like in anthropology, one of the central things that we like always teach is cultural relativism, right? So it's like, it doesn't really matter what your cultural perspective is on something. Like as anthropologists, we're not trying to figure out the truth of something per se. We're trying to figure out like what it is and how it matters to a particular group of people and how they incorporate that as part of their worldview. And I know that this is maybe also perhaps kind of a gripe I have, I would say, with some contemporary anthropology in general, is that I feel like they've kind of forgotten this fact in terms of like that's just a basic thing we're trying to do as anthropologists. Like we're not trying to figure out, like we're not the people who are sitting there and saying, is this real? Yes or no. Is this science? Yes or no. It's more like how do you as a scientist understand this to be a part of science? Or how do you as an experiencer understand this to be part of your worldview? And to be honest, this is one of the major critiques that I have of some of the anthropology that's been done previous to this time about UAP, UFO, whatever you want to call it. Sorry to your audience, I tend to use those terms kind of interchangeably. But yeah, like how do you, it's not about necessarily, like how, like, is it real or not? It's more about like, and it's not even necessarily about like in a sense, like, what does it mean to this person? Or is this actually a religion? Or is this actually a science or anything? I'm more just interested in kind of finding out, like, what is the situation here? Like, what's actually happening in general? And with experiencers in general, sorry, I kind of went in a circle there. What I meant to say was that one of the issues I've had with some of the anthropology that has been done up to this point is that they kind of critique, like, even experiences and experiencers with saying, like, with qualifying it as like, oh, this is what this person thinks they saw, when it's like, we wouldn't do the same thing as anthropologists if we were, say, studying, like, you could look at the work of, like, the anthropologist like Philippe de Colas in the Amazon, and the way that he writes about people's experiences with, like, animals and the politics that the animal kingdom has. Anthropologists don't typically look at that kind of thing and then say, like, but that's, like, what those people kind of think, but, like, this is what we really think is going on. But for some reason, some anthropologists have had no qualms doing that with experiencers, and I just don't think that that's appropriate. And like I don't see how that's even productive or helpful at all. And I think that there has been kind of like this weird judgment that has kind of existed in some of the scholarship that's gone on so far. And good Lord, I forget his name, but there is an anthropologist who wrote a paper really recently that I loved, that was basically like, anthropologists these days seem to decide whose participants we take seriously and whose participants we don't. And he specifically calls out how, a lot of anthropologists seem to have a fine time dismissing UAP experiencers. And I think that that's totally accurate, to be honest. But then for me, I think, like, it totally is about UFO experiencers, UAP experiencers, ET, paranormal, all of these experiencers. But then I also think about how it is about that, but it's also not just about that. It's also about how the fact that, like, other disciplines at this point are taking them more seriously than anthropologists, right? Like, and that should be a problem for anthropology as a discipline. If we're getting to a point where people in, like, physics are taking UAP witnesses reports more seriously than anthropologists, it's like, we've really lost our way if we've gotten to that point.
But doesn't that say a lot about the mindset towards this subject?
Oh, yeah.
Because for so long people have been dismissive of this community of
Mhm.
UFO researchers, eyewitnesses, experiencers, where they look at us as just a bunch of uneducated people without a dental plan, working minimum wage, who thinks that the government is trying to stick us at every left turn that we take on the street. That
Mhm.
we don't believe in anything. We have too many guns, yeah, and not enough brain cells. I mean, we smoke too much pot. I mean, whatever you want to call it. But there's a lot of excuses that people have. They don't tend to see a lot of the brains that are in this community. They should know who Jacques Vallée is. They should know who Gary Nolan is. They should
Absolutely.
know who Avi Loeb is, and many others who are looking at this study. But is it out of ignorance that they are treating it that way? Or is it because they don't want their name added to, or the UFO topic added to their name, because of tenure, because of grants, because of opportunities that may lie outside the university?
That's a really good question. So I guess in anthropology, I'm a PhD candidate. I can't really speak to, what it would be like to be a tenure track professor and to be worried about this kind of thing. But I guess from my perspective, like, I don't see how as an anthropologist you truly could be worried about having that tacked to your name, because it's like, that's the kind of thing that we should be studying. That is, like, the classic anthropological question. My supervisor always says, like, this is one of the truly great anthropological questions of our time. Like, so much of what anthropologists are studying today has been more or less settled. This is something that's been really underexplored. But then, for other academics and other disciplines, it absolutely is. And I don't mean to underplay that as a concern, because for sure it is a huge concern for a lot of academics. And I see why, if you've been working for 10 to 15 years as a graduate student or a postgrad, and now you've got a job, even if you're super interested in this topic, I can totally see why you wouldn't want to essentially risk derailing your career to study it. So I don't blame the people who don't want to study it. But then at the same time, I also, like you mentioned, Gary Nolan, I have to also just kind of question the people who go so far out of their way to condemn the fact that this should even be studied at all. Why? It's a hypothesis, right? You test it and you see what the results of the test are, right? And there are all sorts of things in science that people study, and then it doesn't necessarily turn out the way you had thought it would be or hoped it would be or whatever. But for some reason, people are so hostile to this as a topic in academia in general. And again, I'm in anthropology. I'm in a very soft science. I'm in an easy discipline, as far as it goes for that kind of thing. So I am extremely privileged, if I'm being honest, to be in a position where I can study this and have to deal with relatively little, questions or ridicule from people in my discipline. Although even, as I mentioned, in my discipline, there are some people who are still weirdly skeptical about it. But yeah, I can imagine actually. And I know from some of the scientists who I have talked to, yeah, it's crazy. The amount of just, it's not really just skepticism. It's ridicule and it's denialism. And yeah. And sorry, you mentioned this is the thing that I forgot to answer before. You said doesn't healthy skepticism figure into this? Of course it does. Of course it does. And the scientists who are studying this, I think this is something that a lot of the people who are the sources of this ridicule tend to forget. Of course, the serious scientists who are studying this are also, and I don't mean to say serious as scientists as though there are some people who are less serious or something. I'm not putting a value judgment on that. I'm just saying the people who are academic scientists who are studying this, of course they are engaged in healthy skepticism. And just as some examples of that, you could mention, for example, Avi Loeb wrote that paper about, remember in the early days of the Ukraine war, there were all of these reports about a possible UAP that had been cited. And I believe he wrote a paper basically saying that he thought it was a missile. And sorry if I've got the details of that slightly wrong, but that would be an example of, healthy skepticism by a scientist in this arena. Or Dr. Gary Nolan did the genetic samples of those. Again, I'm sorry, I have these general pictures in my mind. I forget the exact details or the names of the samples, but Gary Nolan did the genetic samples for something that was a proposed possible extraterrestrial, and he found out that no, in fact, this was actually, a human being that was sadly deformed, and I believe likely died as a result of that genetic abnormality. So where all the skepticism, or the people who paint themselves as I'm just a healthy skeptic, and then accuse these other people of having no healthy skepticism, it's they conveniently ignore the times when the people who they say have no skepticism have in fact, engaged in scientific skepticism. And in fact, I would argue in some cases, put their neck on the line as far as their credibility with the wider UFO community in order to do so.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there. Maya Cowan from Binghamton University, Anthropology and UFOs. Can they exist? We'll get into that next. In hour 2 of Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned, everybody. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, we are clear. Maya, we have about 5.5 minutes. I'm going to take a quick break here. We're going to turn things over to the dirty one that we call Filth around here. So that way he can go. And no blob sightings tonight, eh, Filth?
No, Blob she's downstairs drinking the rest of my whiskey.
Oh, that.
I couldn't
How do you have
stop
a
her.
cat named Whiskey and drinks called whiskey?
Well, because there's whiskey, but whiskey is also whiskey because anyway, it's a long story, Dave.
It's confusing.
It's more than 5 minutes.
True. All right. Well, I'm just going to go.
Okay, well, I got it under control, Dave. Don't worry.
Okay. I think I'm also going to log off for 1.5 to 2 minutes.
You can do whatever you want.
Thank you very much, Dirty Filth. I'll be right back.
Turn off your microphone so you don't swear like I do.
I've been trying so hard not to, and I'll continue to try.
Okay, everybody's gone. I'm stuck with Dirty Filth here. I'm having difficulties, so I'm just going to go right through with this, and too bad for that. I'll figure it out in the future. All right. Now we're going to draw the little Kentucky goblin here. This is the second part to this previous drawing that I did. The government psyop. With the man in black telling the little gray alien, you must distribute these to local arcades. So here we are, a local arcade and or watering hole. And I'm just going to put this over here a little bit so I'm not mumbling into the air. But so we got Sasquatch and the Goblin. They like to play polybus. The Kentucky Goblin's probably got a high score on it. He likes playing it. I mean, he's just barely tall enough to reach the controls. So in other news, I was walking some dogs on the weekend, and we encountered a deer, and the dogs tried to chase the deer, and it was hilarious how fast the deer vanished into the forest. Because it just made a little bit of noise. I turned and looked, seen it. The dog seen it. Dog started to go after the deer, and the deer just kind of, and I was staring at the deer the whole time. I seen the dog out of my peripheral vision, and the dog started going, and the deer just kind of turned and bounced. It was like 2 bounces, and I just couldn't see the thing anymore. All the brush and everything we were in. So it was kind of interesting. It made me think of Sasquatches. So anyways, that's my rambling story of my weekend. What do we have? Kentucky Goblin here. His little stumpy legs. Put a nipple in there. A little bit of rib cage. Probably doesn't eat very well. I don't know. Would he eat too much underground? You don't got pizza delivery service under there, so that's fine. All right. He's got fairly decent skin, so he's not too wrinkly. Yeah, apparently these arcade machines are melt your brains, kids, so that's the dangers of video games. Should be investigating UFOs or out hunting Sasquatch and Dogman instead of rotting your brains playing arcade machines, wasting your 25 cents a shot. I don't even think arcades even exist anymore, for the most part. This is the old change jar. Let's see if I can scoot that in there.
All right, old Davey's back.
Hi, Dave.
Hi. I
Look at
really
that
like.
vicious Rottweiler.
I know. Got a real tough name in Cherry too.
Yeah, that was the name that her previous owners named her, and I don't know. I felt like she was 4.5 years old, so it's probably too late to change that.
We're changing our dog's name.
Oh, interesting. So now I wish my friend said I should call her Dr. Hynek. And I was like,
That's
that would
nice.
be a great name for a dog. But
Well, ours was named Berlin. You can't have a Chihuahua dog named Berlin.
I don't think so. At least Cherry rhymes with Chihuahua.
So we're renaming him to El Guapo.
Love it.
Boss Rootin?
No, El Guapo. Handsome.
Van Gold, sorry, whose name is a terrible Chihuahua name? Is it Berlin, El Guapo, Cherry, or Dr. Hynek? Which one do you think is a terrible Chihuahua name?
Probably Dr. Hynek.
All of the above.
El Guapo is a kick-ass name.
No, that's a great name. It's a Mexican dog. It deserves a Spanish name.
Exactly.
I also like living in upstate New York with Dr. Hynek. I think that's a great Chihuahua name.
Yes, I would totally think that'd be a great name. I'm going to get you to hold on right there. Thank you to Big Dog, Deb, T-Bone ×2, and CS for the amazing super chats tonight. Very much appreciated. Don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. You can wear our stuff out in public proudly. And we're going to get going in 3 seconds here, everyone. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning us on in as we're talking anthropology and UFOs with Maya Cowan. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Please join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. And what are we looking at? Bardocuculus. Bardocuculus. There we go. Bardocuculus is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. From Binghamton University in New York, anthropologist Maya Cowan is with us. And we're going to get into the subject of UFOs and humanity right now because Dr. Michael Masters out of Idaho, or pardon me, Montana Tech, he'll kill me if I say Idaho, Montana Tech University, good friend of this show, likes his Spaced Out radio, that he gets. Yeah, he shops at our store, by the way, totally shops at our store. But he has a theory that he calls extratempestrals. Yeah, I make fun of it a little bit, call them extra Temptation Island terrestrials or whatever it is. I kind of play on the word there. It's fun for me. He doesn't get my humor, but he laughs. But nonetheless, he believes that these extraterrestrials that we are seeing are not from outer space, but more so time travelers coming back in time to study humanity. What's your thoughts on that?
So this was kind of a personal question because for me, like I think I mentioned earlier on, I totally was introduced to this topic by my grandfather, David Cowan. He wrote a number of books about dowsing. If anybody's interested in that topic, you can look him up. He's passed on now. But to me, like, I remember him showing us all these documentaries and, like telling me so much about this topic. But the thing that he always told me, or that he often told me, I would say, like, I think he at times floated the extraterrestrial hypothesis, but he often would bring up, and I'm sorry, I always forget the proper name for it. I always call it like the future human hypothesis, but it's extratempestrials. That's right. Okay. Gotcha. So he would bring up the extratempestrial hypothesis a lot as far as like, this is what he believed would be the most likely sort of scenario for somebody, if there are these beings, and they are as they're described, basically, your typical grays, and they're visiting humans and they're abducting humans and they're observing humans. Like, doesn't it make the most sense? And, of course, this was kind of, I think it was before Michael Masters' books on the topic that I remember him introducing this, but like, even just like the general idea of the topic always intrigued me, that it's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be extraterrestrial that would be coming to be interested in us, right? Like, even just take the fact that, we as human beings are so obsessed with our ancestors. We do all that we possibly can to figure at, well, obviously, as an anthropologist, I know this, I've participated in this. We do all that we possibly can to try to figure out what our ancestors were like. So would not the same be true for future humans? Like, Homo sapiens they're not the beginning of humanity by a long shot. So isn't it a little bit naive to assume that we are the end? And then, if human beings also keep progressing technologically the way that we have so far, as far as like our capabilities in terms of just, I don't know, technology in general, why wouldn't we want to come back and visit ourselves from the past? And I will say, the way that my grandfather, I remember him telling me this, and I remember this very specific conversation that we had. We were like on a beach together, and I think maybe another one of my cousins was there too. Maybe they would remember this. But I remember him mentioning, and he said that specifically in his view, it was like that perhaps the human beings in the future have lost their capacity for emotion. And so they're coming back to observe us now in this time of great emotion. Now, anyway, that was my grandfather. I'm not putting that on anybody else who believes in the extraterrestrial hypothesis, but it totally makes sense because, even just in general conversation, people always talk about like, what would future archaeologists think if they came here? So what if the ET are future archaeologists who have come back and they've decided, well, what if we could not just dig up their remains and see what they might have looked like and kind of guess based on what our society looked like, but what if, well, also, I don't mean to demean the discipline of archaeology by saying that. They have much more sophisticated methods than that, but I'm not an archaeologist, so I can't well describe them. But I also think that Michael Masters' hypothesis is super interesting because as like a comparative evolutionary anthropologist, he is like the person to describe, how like the skeletal changes that are observed are quite possibly also like they would make sense, as far as the way that human beings have evolved so far from like our distant ancestors, the Australopithecines, to us now as Homo sapiens. If we kept evolving in the same direction, it might very well look like a gray. So I think that's fascinating and well worth looking at as well. I think it's a really solid idea.
The way humanity is going and the way we are advancing so quickly, especially in the last 30 years, we are looking at new technologies now with AI really starting to advance. We are looking at new technologies that are set up to try and take humanity to a different level. In the end, usually what happens when things like that happen, if you could believe George Orwell in 1984, that's usually not a very good sign because it's going to make us more lazy. It's going to make us more, fit for people to not accomplish the things that they were set out to accomplish, which is, we're a bunch of worker bees. Let's just be honest. We're a bunch of worker bees.
Or we'll
And
become like the Wall-E people just living on a space station in the.
that's a great example there too, and I wonder about that often at times regarding
Yeah.
this. And when I look at extraterrestrials, though, I often wonder as someone who has been and had face-to-face encounters with a couple of these creatures, I often wonder, are they really here to study us, or are they here to get to know us? Are they here to take us? Are they here to harm us? I think there's so many theories that could go all along with that point, that it makes me wonder whether or not, humanity is really caught behind, due to the fact that we do have people who may be in the know and just are not sharing that information with us.
Yeah. I have two trains of thoughts, and I'll probably lose the second one. But the first one is that, okay, so just on this idea that, like, what could they possibly be here for? It's fascinating. I feel like people not always. I often hear an argument from, like the base level skeptics, denialists who like don't want anything to do with this, that they're like, what is so interesting about us? What would they want to come here for? Like, we're not that advanced. We can't yet do all of these things that we hypothesize that they could do to come here and whatever. But as an anthropologist, I know people who, like, one of my dear friends is an anthropologist who studies the situation on the US-Mexico border, and their research is like the coolest research. Like, I mean, it's it's terrifying, and it has horrible implications for the state of humanity, but like, it's fascinating research, right? So it's like, humans are interested in researching all sorts of different things, like every other sort of, like, any human situation that could possibly exist is pretty much being studied academically by some other human, and perhaps not even just by one other human, but by like an entire, like, academy of other humans who consider this to be the most interesting situation on Earth, so much that they're willing to devote their entire lives and career to it. Whether it's like the situation on the US-Mexico border, whether it's UAP, whether it's like the food, the numerous food cultures of South America, or whether it's like, like the Brexit dilemma, like just all of these different situations that exist on planet Earth. They're so varied, and all of them are being so heavily studied by so many people. So to me, it's absurd that the idea that like humanity is something that another civilization, potentially like that beyond planet Earth, wouldn't want to study. It's also obscene to me, the idea that like us in the future wouldn't be interested in our situation in the past. And for precisely the situation that you said, like, we're at a position right now where we are at the crux of so many interesting technologies and potentially extremely destructive. That's interesting. I meant to say disruptive, and I feel like my my vocal cords betrayed me and I said destructive, but whatever. Read into that what you may. Freudian slip. Disruptive, destructive technologies, what have you, whatever. But yeah, no, I think like, if you are looking from the perspective of anything other than like a human being rooted in the here and now, of course, this time, this space, these people would be incredibly interesting to you. And then I forget what the other thing you said was, as I promised I would.
No, that's okay though, because we can move on. I want to ask you, totally off topic, but in regards to AI, does it scare you? Because it's really weird. But now that I'm older and I'll be 51 next month, I am noticing a lot of older movies that seem to be coming to fruition. And, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm paranoid. I don't know. But when I look at Terminator, to me now, with the way we are with AI, it almost seems like Terminator is a movie of prophecy.
Yeah, that is a good question. And it's, oh boy, I wish I had given this more thought. So I don't know. I don't know yet if it scares me, to be honest. Because like, in a way, yes, of course it does. Like, it's terrifying. but then in another sense, it's like not really. Like, I don't know. I just ask like
Let me dig into this a little bit more, okay? Because
yeah,
I
please
think
do.
I think a lot of people look at AI, and once again, maybe I'm paranoid
Yeah,
about it, but I think a lot of people look at AI and think, okay, I get to create really creative memes and thumbnails, and
totally.
all I got to do is type in
Yeah,
a picture, it automatically draws it for me. It saved me hiring a stranger from Fiverr, and I can have a new work logo or whatever it may be.
sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's that. There's people who, like me, I speak more blue collar. I'm not I'm not very academic when it comes to my vocabulary. That's why, when I used metamorphosis earlier, I was excited about that. Okay. I was. But the
No,
point that I'm
sorry, I'm not making fun. I just no,
no,
I agree with you. I'm from a very blue collar background as well, so I relate.
but, but we look at Chat GPT. We don't write anymore because all we have to do is say it
Yeah.
into a computer and define everything that has to do with it. I mean, how many college students now are cheating by not writing their own scripts anymore, but they are writing through Chat GPT to get a more perfect answer. I look at my own son who's 10 years old,
Mhm.
and I look at his writing ability. My kid is smart, man, but his writing ability is terrible.
Yeah.
Okay. And nobody writes cursive anymore. Everybody prints. I mean, we see the shift, but what we don't see is the militarization of AI. We don't
Mhm.
see publicly how AI is working within government. We don't see a lot of this. And once again, I'm not trying to be paranoid about this,
No,
but
not
it
at
makes
all.
it makes me sit back and say, hold on a second here. When you have McDonald's or these fast food restaurants who are now looking at hiring robots and AI technology to make a burger, that's scary. That's really scary.
Yeah. So I'm glad you went first because I feel like you touched on a lot of things I was having a hard time formulating. Like, okay, so you know, I teach university courses, and I will say, like, when ChatGPT first came out, I had a moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm terrified. Like all my students are just going to be writing, like, they're not going to write any of their essays anymore. They're just going to put it through GPT, and like they're not even going to bother learning anything, and it's going to be just like disheartening, and like what's the point of academia? Like, I went through this real moment of despair with it. And then to be honest, I don't think it came to fruition. Like, and no offense to my students if they're listening, but like most of their essays were like way too bad to have been written by Chat GPT. So, you know, great. Like, I'd much rather read a slightly poorly written essay that doesn't quite get to the point I wanted it to get than one that's clearly just fed through an algorithm and whatever. But then, I also, so yeah, I don't know. I'm all over the place because I see the benefits, right? Because also, like you said, like, perhaps like if you don't necessarily have like an academic background, like Chat GPT could potentially help you to be able to get into a position where you can get into academia in a way that you might not necessarily have been able to before. And I think that's great. Like, I think that there's a lot about, notice I didn't say AI. There's a lot about Chat GPT that I think is like potentially really cool and democratizing, and that like could, lead to great things for individuals. But like you said, it's like the broader, like it's the government applications. Like it's the applications of the things that I don't think that like you and I probably are privy to that they're doing with these kinds of applications that scare me, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't so much even scare me like about, like, even with like deep fakes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not scared of deep fakes. I just remember, like, 5 years ago or so, when this technology was like brand new and kind of janky and didn't work that well, like people were like, in the whatever election, people will be sharing these memes of politicians, and they will like change the world because nobody will know what is true. But what I have observed has been, one, an abundance of hilarious memes that are obviously deep fakes from politicians, and two, an abundance of skepticism from people about what politicians actually say because of those deep fakes. And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. I don't necessarily see it as a good thing either, but I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing that people would become generally more skeptical of specifically what politicians say. But then, of course, then I do worry about what happens when people become generally skeptical of what every single person says, and when people don't believe every single person. And I don't know. So, but like you said, again, it's hard to even know, I think, at this point, like how these technologies are applied by just like the general public versus by like the government, and by, I think, even more potentially scarily by like corporations like Meta and Google and other, tech companies that have all these interests that like none of us are actually really privy to. So
and that's not even including the military yet.
right.
Because
I guess I meant that with the government, but yeah. Totally.
But if you look at it, I mean, the stories that we hear coming out of places like Area 51 with the technology, we don't know how far advanced they are ahead in places like that. Are they still 30 years? Are they 50 years? Are they I've heard up to 100, 150 years ahead.
Right.
That they are technologically advanced, that they're playing with that type of equipment at places like Area 51, whereas it'll never see the light of day for our generation, my generation, or your generation, or even my son's generation. I mean, that's pretty impressive in one way, but very sad in another, that humanity has to suffer when all of this is going on. In the meantime, people are getting anal probed by aliens. I mean, it just doesn't seem to make sense at times there, Maya.
Totally. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. And yeah, I just don't know. I don't think we really know at this point. I guess I just have a sense that like I feel like if they had this technology, well, okay, so I guess I should just bring this back to the general UFO conversation. I feel like if they had this technology, they would be using it at this point, like if the US government had this technology, if China had this technology, if Russia had this technology, I just have a sense that they would be using it. So
yeah. And I fully understand. I mean, look, we don't know what they're using. I mean, we're hearing laser weapons, we're hearing all sorts of stuff, but where did they get it? Is that developed by us? Has it come here from the extraterrestrials themselves in some sort of trade? I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's all hypothetical and conjecture, as we got about 1 minute to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, with 1 minute to go, I feel like I can't think of anything to say.
Well, it is a little bit of a rush. It is a little bit of a rush, and I promise you we'll get back to UFOs when we, we kind of an AI tangent there.
No, I just think like in general, like the world is in such a place of conflict in the last 20, 30 years, even in like right now, where it's like if the US government had this question, like even like since so let's say 1947 is the first instance of UFOs, even though it's not.
Let's hold that thought. We've run out of time here, and I apologize, but we're going to go to break here. We have Maya Cowan for another 30 minutes on Spaced Out Radio. AI technology, do you trust it? What are they hiding technologically speaking? Let's get into this when we return on the Mighty SOR right after this. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
There we go. There we go. We are all free and clear here. I didn't really expect the conversation to go that way. It just kind of happens sometimes. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. What are your tattoos there? Oh, she's typing. Yeah, exactly. What are your tattoos, Maria?
Sorry?
What are your tattoos?
Oh, this is my my Scottish family crest. Which, by the way, I meant to say, you keep saying Cowan. That's right. Nobody ever pronounces my last name correctly, but you got it right.
How are they pronouncing it? How Cowan?
People assume it's Cowan almost universally, which, like, there's nothing wrong with that. I just, like, as a lifelong Cowan, I always am like, oh, I didn't think that was how Cowan is spelled. And then this one, okay, so you'll love this. This is a dogwood for British Columbia.
Very nice. Don't you remember Jeff Cowan of the Vancouver Canucks?
Right?
Exactly.
And then I have this dragonfly as well, but it's not.
I got a big Sasquatch on my leg.
That's sick. Okay, I'm not going to show it on the camera because it's on the top of my foot, but when I was a teenager, I got a stick and poke tattoo of a UFO.
Nice.
It does not look like a UFO. It looks like a triangle. It is a triangle. But you know what? Still a UFO.
Beautiful.
Many UFOs are triangles and many triangles are UFOs. So
exactly. I like it. Let's see what Dirty Filth finished up here with. Right there. You guys should play a real game like Tetris. Polybus is a CIA psyop.
That goes hand in hand with the previous cartoon, Dave. Let me grab it here.
Oh, yes. Look at that. You're always telling a story. Always telling.
They got boxes of goofy masks they can't get rid of.
I know, but we don't even know what kind of goofy masks they are.
I know. Look at that. Aliens, Men in Black, Sasquatch, Kentucky Goblins, 32 Squared.
Mm-hmm. Sasquatch is looking like he had a few too many schnapps on this evening.
I think his hockey team did pretty good, so.
Yeah. Sasquatch is definitely an Oilers fan. Definitely.
They can teleport, apparently, so.
Absolutely.
I've heard that, so we're going to give this guy the ability to teleport home tonight. He's not driving, folks, just saying.
Mm-hmm. He's catching an Uber back to the forest.
He's just going to open a portal.
Oh, that too.
Right through there.
That works too.
Organic portal, Dave.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, Jeremy Jones, an American Patriot. She keeps apologizing because she's Canadian. That's what we do. We apologize
Sorry,
all the
Dave.
time. No problem. Sorry for interrupting you there, Filth.
Sorry.
Christy Avels, how are you? Filth Christy is saying Filthy should raffle off some of his drawings or something.
I think we can do that.
We should totally do like an online auction for your cartoons.
Yes. The stack is getting tall, and I may die under a collapse of the cartoons.
You damn well may be. Yeah.
If I got a basketball there, you can see more Skinner and basketball save myself for a couple days, and then the cats aren't going to save me. And
mm-hmm. I hear you. We got about 1 minute to go here. Did the Oilers make the playoffs? They slammed LA tonight.
Hell yeah.
Body slammed them. Drove them into the ice. Zach Hyman with his first career playoff hat trick. Mm-hmm.
he also writes children novels.
Does he?
I think he's got 2 or 3 now. He's got two or three children's books out that he made.
All right. Big thank you to Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, T-Bone ×2, CS, Deborah Rudy, and Big Dog with the super chats tonight. Very much appreciate the love and the support. Speaking of where the hell is the Doug Shelby tonight? How are we supposed to do a show? Just remember, American Patriot, you can insult us Canucks all you want, but we're still tuned against you.
Doesn't
History.
phase us.
Here, all right, 7 seconds. Here we go, everybody. Like 5 seconds. 2-0. Here we go. Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears, wherever you're listening. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives. We're on every major podcast network and on youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We continue on tonight. Maya Cowan is here as we have her till the top of the hour. She's an anthropologist from Binghamton University in New York. Maya, thank you so much for being here. This is flying on by.
Thanks so much for having me, Dave. I've been having so much fun, way more fun than I thought I would have. I was very nervous, but now I'm having fun.
It's all the Sasquatch around you. That's what it is.
No, it's definitely, I don't know what I did have a Sasquatch book. There it is. There it is. My mom sent this to me. Shout out to my mom.
Oh, that's from Thomas Steenberg.
Yes, it is. Yes, Thomas Steenberg book, Sasquatch Bigfoot. I love it.
He lives in Mission.
That doesn't surprise me. A lot of it, it's basically like a British Columbia, Alberta focus book. So,
yes.
Yeah. And it's great. I thought it was, yeah.
I like it. I like it. Good for you having that.
To the
All
person
right.
in the chat, yeah, the people sorry, just a quick thing. When you're a little kid and you say oh, I like an animal. I like gorillas. And so everyone always sends you gorilla things for your birthday.
Yes.
For me, that was always Sasquatch. So I have so many Sasquatch things because people have been sending me Sasquatch things my entire life.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my God, he's so cute.
I got this one from our listener, Kira.
I love it. I feel bad that the people on the radio can't. Well, he looks maybe like more of a Yeti to me, although maybe that's nitpicking.
He's still cute. It's about the size of my Chihuahua.
Incredibly cute, yeah.
Literally about the size and same color as my Chihuahua. That's okay.
Right.
That's okay.
Same color and same size as mine as well.
Right before the break, we were talking, you wanted to finish up a thought about AI and the way that it could be used towards more nefarious things, what the government is hiding, especially in the United States with technology. And we don't get to really play with those kind of toys. We want to, but we don't really get to.
Right. Well, I guess what I was just thinking in general, and it's true of AI, but it's also true of reverse engineering of alien craft or ET craft or UAP craft or UFO craft or whatever you want to say. But what I tend to think is okay, if the USA had this technology, if China had this technology, if Russia had this technology, if literally any human being had this technology, would we not have used it to kill each other by now? And that's a really disturbing thought. But, okay, I just read the book Nuclear War by Annie Jacobson. I'm on kind of a disturbed thought about war right now, particularly nuclear war. And so, I just tend to think about, and honestly, reading that book made me think about this even more. It's people think, okay, and they don't just think, people say this to me all the time. They say, how do you know this isn't US secret technology? How do you know this isn't Chinese technology? How do you know this isn't Russian technology? Well, first of all, I think that even if you look at nuclear war as a parallel, like if we had been, sorry, I need to turn off the comments because they have been distracting my eyes this whole time.
That's okay.
Focus on two things. Okay, so first of all, if they had, you know, like, okay, say in 1947, when this technology was first spotted, it was Russian. We would have figured it out by now. Like, we being, you know, United States, Canada, the Five Eyes, whatever you want to call it. If this had been Chinese technology in 2023, we would have figured that out by now. And if this had been any human being's technology, if you think about the magnitude of conflicts that we have been involved in since 1947, somebody would have deployed this technology on somebody else. I just think that that's a fact. And then the thing that makes me actually slightly optimistic with the nuclear technology thing is just how many near misses we've had with nuclear war since the first deployment of a nuclear weapon, and thankfully the last, by one human nation against another human nation. And then it makes me wonder, like, well, okay, I went from a very concrete point to a very abstract point, but here I am. Okay, so, you know, what is going on then? The fact that, like, there have been so many nuclear near misses, and we have so much evidence that they have stopped nuclear silos from working or other nuclear interference. So, well, they, you know, something has, you know, speaking from a scientific perspective, something has, you know, we don't know necessarily what it is, but it's just such an interesting perspective because people always bring defense into it. And they always say, well, what if it's this defense technology? What if it's, you know, what if it's whatever with defense? But it's like, what is your evidence that it is defense? Because to me, I feel like it would be much more compelling if somebody were to be able to bring forward any piece of evidence and say, yes, it is defense, and here's why I say so. I would be very interested to hear that, but I haven't heard anything compelling ever in regards to that. Although, you know, I'd be willing to, if somebody were to present that, I'd be willing to hear it. But
Speaking of defense,
yeah,
in Canada, I know you have a vested interest in learning about the Canadian subject regarding UFOs, and I know this is a topic that's important to you. Yet Canada has been relatively silent. We're all waiting for Dr. Mona Niemer's SciCan report on this subject, which is coming out at the end of summer. We know as of today that the Department of National Defense in Canada is not cooperating with Dr. Niemer and her SciCan team regarding this subject. And Larry Maguire, the Manitoba MP, who's been really the face of the UFO story in Canada, mentioned that on Twitter today about that. What do you think Canada is hiding when it comes to UFOs? Or because Canadian people, for our American listeners, we have this thing in this country where if we don't speak of it, it never happens. So your thoughts?
Sorry for your YouTube viewers. I was just laughing because it's so true. And I was trying not to. But it's so true. And oh my God, my thoughts, to be honest, okay, like you said, it's Larry Maguire. He's a Conservative Party MP who's been leading the charge. We know that also behind the scenes, there have been MPs from the NDP who have been interested in this. And so to me, what is it's actually, it's fascinating, but it's not at all surprising, is like, is it that they're hiding it? Or is it that they're just too afraid to like say anything because they're just too afraid to say anything about anything at all? That's my perspective on Canadian politics. Like, Canadian politicians love to never talk about anything. and they love to talk circles about nothing and then say nothing about anything that matters. I think that's true regardless of what party we're talking about in Canadian politics. Would you agree with me, Dave?
Oh, very much so. Very
Yeah.
much so. But we do know that there have been UAP spotted over Canadian nuclear facilities,
There
much
sure
like
have
here
been.
in the US. We know that UAP have been spotted by Canadian military pilots and by a
Mhm.
lot of international pilots who, for a lot of people who don't know, when aircraft take off in Canada or the United States to head over to Europe, they actually fly over the North Pole, which has a
Right.
lot of sightings around there as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, we
And I
do
know
know.
I'm pretty sure Americans for Safe Aerospace as well has talked about reports from Canadian pilots as well.
Right. But the one thing that the big difference between the Canadian issue with UAP and the Americans is the Americans have gone off of a threat narrative, whereas Canada is coming at it from a more scientific narrative.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
I mean, okay, so I'm not like, I guess, like, technically the two things aren't mutually exclusive, but, obviously, like, the threat narrative that has driven a lot of the US Congress or, like, the military spending narrative is a little bit different from the Canadian narrative, which I think is driven a little bit more by concerns about, like, reporting and science.
Mhm.
Although, again, I'm not I I'm not privy to their discussions, although, I'd love to be. If
Me too.
anybody's listening from from Space Sky Canada, please please reach out to Dave and me, as two interested and very knowledgeable Canadians. Anyways, regardless, yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting in Canada how much differently it's played out, but I will say the one thing that scares me about Canada is because it's like the Liberals have, for those who aren't Canadian, the Liberals are the ruling government, the NDP and the Conservatives are the opposition parties, and those are the only two parties who have been willing to engage with it. But it's like what scares me actually is that because the ruling party has actually just like refused to acknowledge it in any sense, it makes me worried that it will become a partisan issue in Canada when it hasn't become one in the US. Because I don't think it should ever become a partisan issue. Like, I don't think that this issue is partisan. I know people from the US and from Canada who are from like all across the political spectrum, from like far right to far left to anarchist to like, like political ideologies I can't even remember the name of. Like, people from all across the political spectrum really, really care about this. And so I just really hope that it doesn't become something partisan in Canada like it has been in the US, just because of like certain parties, frankly, like cowardice to engage with the topic.
Well, the other thing too is
Well,
the jour-
yeah, please feel free to disagree with me.
well, no, I'm actually agreeing with you on this because the journalists in Canada are not engaging on this subject either.
That's
You know,
true.
I have done numerous interviews across Canada about this subject. And the
Right.
only thing they want to hear about is what is going on in the US.
Mhm.
Never once have I been asked a question by a Canadian journalist about what is happening or is this happening in Canada. So the media has a huge issue in that as well because the media refuses to cover this topic.
No, you know what? You're totally right. But then I also like I don't want to derail this whole subject, but like, is that not just a general issue in Canada that like Canadians sometimes just don't give a shit about don't care about what's happening in Canada because they're just like for some reason more interested in what's happening in the US? I
True.
don't know.
That's because they have nicer toys down there. It is cold up here at times.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a more
Right.
intriguing country. There's 50 states and, you know, all sorts of things going on, and it's warmer.
Yes.
And
No Trudeau. But that's for another topic. That's for another topic, right? But
well,
you know
that's
what?
compelling for anybody.
We praise the dear leader around here. Yes, we do. Oh, hail, dear leader. But I do want to get into, though, you are part of the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies as well, who is looking at this subject on an international level regarding UAP and the science behind it. We mentioned in the first little bit that there is a disconnect between people who have had experiences and people who are really studying the nuts and bolts aspect of this, like
Yeah,
most of scientists at the SCU. How do we, in your mind, start to combine the two? Because this disconnect
for
seems to be
sure.
real challenging right now within the UFO community.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm super mindful. We only have like 10 more minutes, right?
About 8.5.
Okay. So, first of all, I think the disconnect is smaller than people perhaps who are on the outside would like to, or not would like to, but perhaps it's smaller than people imagine, because a lot of people who are on the inside of the scientific community have had experiences themselves. That is 1,000% true. Like, a lot of the experiencer science community overlaps hardcore, I would say. But then, like, there's just maybe perhaps a little bit of a disconnect about like the just like the scientific hypothesis, like we have to test this and this will take perhaps years to do that, versus like, I don't even want to like paint the experiencer community in one way or another, because experiencers are experiencers, and I take experiencers for personally, like I believe, I believe you experience what you experience. I really do. Um, so, I do think there's perhaps less of a disconnect in terms of that understanding than a lot of people perhaps think that there is. It's just maybe like a disconnect in terms of like the, the application of methods or something like that. And I absolutely think that scientists are listening to experiencers, which is something I often hear people who are experiencers say that they're not. In my experience, I think they are. Perhaps maybe they're not. If you don't think, and also another thing I want to say, like, if you disagree with anything I said tonight, please reach out to me. Please tell me. I want to know, like, it will only better me as a person if you disagree with me and you let me know that you disagree with me. I really believe that. Please let me know. So yeah, anyways, yeah, I think that just disconnect is actually a lot smaller than we think it is. Sorry, I said that like 4 times. But then the other thing is just that there are a lot of researchers right now who are studying experiencers, and there have been researchers who've studied experiencers in the past. Like, for example, Artie Six Killer Clark is an Indigenous studies scholar who's done some really amazing research. And if you haven't read her research, I highly recommend it. Like, she has these amazing experiencer accounts that she reports. Nancy Red Star, I think is her name. And now I'm pretty sure it's Nancy Red Star, but I'd love to look that up just really quickly.
Well, while you're doing that, I want to ask you,
Anyway,
in regards to,
John Mack,
yeah,
and then
John
also
Madison.
Kimberly Clark as well is another SUOPS Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies scholar who's also researching experiencer narratives. And if you are an experiencer and you'd love to, get in contact with a scholar
Right.
who's studying specifically experiencer narratives, please contact me. And I will be happy to do my best to get you in contact with a scholar who's studying experiencers.
5 minutes ago, or 4.5 minutes ago here,
Sorry.
do you believe then that there is something within the human brain of experiencers or the human body of experiencers that could collectively answer a lot of these questions that we just haven't tapped into yet?
Do you mean like do you think this is a physiological thing rather than an external thing? Is that your question?
I think it could be. I think it could be.
I don't think I do. Although, you know what? I haven't seen any evidence either way. And I think that's one of the major important things in this question is I haven't seen any other evidence either way. Like if a scientist would like to present me with evidence one way or the other, maybe I would change my mind, but nobody seems to really even have studied that from anything I've seen. So again, contact me if I haven't seen that and it exists out there, but I haven't seen it out there that there's any sort of research to suggest that like, oh, it's just that, you know, there are X number of brain changes that exist in the heads of experiencers that don't exist in the heads of non-experiencers. But then also, you know, sorry, now I'm talking fast because we're on a deadline, but you know, like another thing we talked about is like, there are experiencers of people beyond the UFO phenomenon. Like myself, I've experienced a number of paranormal experiences that are actually quite similar in some ways, but in other ways quite different from the things that a lot of UFO experiencers or abductee experiencers that I've met have experienced. So it's like, you know, how would they even compare, you know, those kinds of experiences? And then how would they sort out our brain chemistry from other brain chemistry? So I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. It's quite possible that those things exist. I just personally haven't ever seen, heard, or experienced anything like it. Although, again, you know, if it exists, please hit me up on X. Tell me about it. I'd love to hear about it. But
yes. Yeah, the battlefield we call X in the UFO world. That's for sure. That is completely for sure. Oh, it's so ugly out there at times, but
Lord is in it.
yes.
It's
Yes. UFO Twitter needs some Jesus very, very much right about now because
some
it's
Jesus or some space alien Jesus or something
right.
along those lines.
Oh, you are so right. You are so right. Maya, it's hard to believe we're going to be wrapping up here in under 2 minutes, but I've had so much fun with you. And it's, you know, being a BC guy myself, having a lady from BC,
Me
you
too.
know, starting to get into this, it really means a lot. Tell everybody where they can find your work, because I
Yes.
mean, it's really important in order to get your information out there.
Thank you. This has been so much fun, much more fun than I ever imagined when I was really nervous about this. Okay, my name on X is UAP Maya, I think. Sorry again to your audience. Sorry as a Canadian. Don't get mad at me that it's UAP. My name is UAP Maya, UAPMAYA. And then as well, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Maya Cowan, same as it's spelt, wherever you're reading it now on Spaced Out Radio. And then the other place that I'd love for you to all find me is that I'm teaching a course for the Society of UAP Studies that begins in early June. And so that's called I think it's called Anthropology and UAP Studies, Questions of Humanity, Cultures, and Future Humans, or something like that. And yeah, I would say that's probably a pretty accurate description of what we're talking about. And that is available. I don't have the exact URL memorized in my head, but if you Google SUOPS, Maya, UAP, Anthropology, it'll come up. I guarantee.
Awesome. Maya, thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. It's been an absolute treat to get to meet you and introduce you to our audience. I've had a lot of fun as well. Coming up next on Spaced Out Radio, Steve Stockton from Among the Missing. Then Nicole Sackage fills in for Courtney Marcassani on UFO Court. It all happens in hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio, coming right up.
Thanks so much for having me, Dave.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. with your host, Dave Scott.
I liked her. I did. You could tell she was nervous. She doesn't do a lot of interviews, but I thought that was great. I thought she did well. All right, everybody, I'm going to take a break. Try and move my chair, will you? As hour 3 is next. right. Old Davy's back. T-Bone, nice hat trick. Thank you, buddy. T-Bone's going to teach me all about cryptocurrency. Maya, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that bell. Don't forget. Since you're in the chat room, you can't forget. Let's go, Oilers. Big thank you tonight to T-Bone with a hat trick, CS, Bigfoot Rob, Deborah Rooney, and Big Dog with the super chats tonight. Very much appreciated. This is awesome. What a great night of radio. What a great night of radio. I've had fun tonight. I hope you guys have too. Reminder to all of you that I will be in Nebraska leaving Thursday, so Sweet Robbie G will be filling in for me on Thursday and Friday night. I'll be back on Monday. Yeah. It's going to be fun. Going to be fun. Hi, Kyle Thompson. Twist UAP. Welcome to SOR chat, everybody. Don't forget you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. Do not have ugly swag. Nothing's ugly there. So go get yourself some gear. Here we go. Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears. Thank you for tuning us in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Bardo Kukulis. Bardo Kukulis is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. It's that time of the night we say hello to Steve Stockton from Among the Missing and another creepy story.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Among the Missing YouTube channel on Spaced Out Radio. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'm about to take you on an unbelievable journey of people just like you. Their stories and encounters will haunt us on Among the Missing. First up, well-known actor Julian Sands left his North Hollywood home on January 13, 2023 for a hike in the Mount Baldy area of the San Gabriel Mountains in Southern California. He has not been seen since. With an acting career that spans 40 years, this 65-year-old Smallsville actor is also known for his roles in horror films, such as Arachnophobia and Warlock. The charismatic father of three started his acting career in 1983, starring in Oxford Blues, The Killing Fields, and the BBC adaptation of The Box of Delights. In 1985, Sands decided to relocate permanently to the United States to further his acting career. Being a well-trained hiker, he had traversed Mount Baldy several times and knew the area well, stated a friend during an interview with The Independent. Kevin Ryan, a fellow actor, friend, and hiking partner, also said, quote, "Sands is the most experienced hiker I know, but obviously something went wrong. For me, each day that does go by puts more pressure and I guess brings a lot of doubt in. But Julian is such an advanced hiker. It is what he did. His whole life, he was climbing mountains. It was a true passion of his," end quote. Julian Sands was reported missing the evening of January 13th by his wife, Eugenia Sitkowitz, when he failed to return home. Search efforts started immediately, but were quickly hindered by weather conditions in the area. Several days of rain, snow, and icy conditions have made ground searches almost impossible. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department has been utilizing Air Patrol helicopters fitted with a RICO device. a device that can trace credit cards and other chip-containing devices, including reflective material on some outdoor gear, to help narrow the search area. The last cell phone ping from Julian's phone was received on January 15th, leading investigators to believe that the battery was dead. The department is also utilizing drones to conduct a more thorough scan of the trail he is believed to have taken. Authorities stated that the conditions were so treacherous on the 3,900-foot mountain that there have been 14 rescues in the last 2 weeks. They're advising hikers to stay off the mountain due to avalanches, icy, snow-packed areas, and plummeting temperatures. On January 18th, the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department recovered Julian Sands' car in a parking area close to the Mount Baldy trailhead. On the 19th, his 3 children joined the search efforts for their father. As of February 13th, officials working closely with search and rescue operators haven't given up hope of finding the missing actor. Officials had given an update on February 12th stating, quote, "The search and outcome for Julian Sands may not be what we like. We are still conducting searches as weather and conditions allow. Right now, those are just by air because of the icy conditions and such on the mountain. But unfortunately, nothing new has developed," end quote. Mara Rodriguez, San Bernardino County Sheriff's spokesperson, said, quote, "We haven't transitioned into recovery at this point. It's still a search and rescue mission. We don't have any kind of set date for that, but it's something that we're keeping in mind," end quote. Now, the trail where Julian Sands went missing has a sordid history, aside from this missing actor. In August 2019, 31-year-old Amanda Kathleen Custer was reported missing after a domestic dispute with her boyfriend, 28-year-old Robert Anthony Camus. Police responded to calls for help when Custer entered a neighboring apartment occupied by an older man that was also battered in the initial incident. Camus chased Custer while hurling violent threats when the two entered the unnamed man's apartment. It was at that point police were called and Camus was arrested. He was later charged with assault using force, injuring his girlfriend, and first-degree burglary with a person present. However, Camus quickly bonded out and allegedly kidnapped Custer. Witnesses told police they saw him load Custer's lifeless body into his car and he left towards Mount Baldy. Later, a video was recovered of Camus singing a karaoke song about, quote, burying his girlfriend in the dirt, end quote. Now, the authorities were able to access an electronic monitoring device the suspect was wearing at the time to track his movements. The maps show him in the Mount Baldy/Little Creek area. After a 5-hour standoff with police, Camus was arrested again and charged with first-degree murder. The details of the case are as follows. Police are asking for the public's help locating the body of Amanda Kathleen Custer, and also if anyone saw the suspect or his gray 2017 Prius in the Mount Baldy Little Creek area on July 29, 2019, please contact authorities. Rick Custer, Amanda's father, joined the police in asking for help locating his daughter's remains. He's quoted as saying, "This is basically a plea to anybody out there, especially on July 29, 2019, that was hunting, fishing, or mountain biking that may have seen anything out of the ordinary. It may not have seemed important at that time, but it does now. I've gone up there, Little Creek, a couple times with no results. Some other family members have been up there with no results. We just want to bring Amanda home." Amanda Kathleen Custer was the mother of an 8-year-old son at the time she disappeared. Robert Anthony Camus has pleaded not guilty and is awaiting trial.
And thank you to Steve Stockton from Among the Missing for another creepy story. If you want more just like that, head on over to youtube.com/Among the Missing. From the missing to the mysterious, Nicole Sackich filling in for Courtney Marcassani on UFO Court.
That is an interplanetary flying space saucer. You have made me very angry. Very angry indeed.
All right, Nicole Sackich, we'll get you to unmute your microphone as we're glad to have you here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. And thank you for joining us once again.
Oh my God. I'm so tired, but I'm glad to be here. I know Courtney needed a rest. Like, the UFO report will go on. It remains.
That
like
it does.
In the mist.
That it does. And Courtney is taking a family day tonight, so that way she could catch up and get some things done on the East Coast before she starts making her way back west and eventually down to Reno for the fan party. But it was a busy, busy weekend.
Stop
Yeah,
it.
it was a busy.
We haven't been talking at once every 6 hours.
It's busy when my phone doesn't stop ringing. And it all has to do with the coming out party for whistleblower Jason Sands. Now, there's a lot of controversy that has come out about this because Sands is somebody who he didn't do the traditional route by going to do a radio interview or a television interview with somebody. He decided to come out on a Twitter space. And he was on that Twitter space for 5 hours or so, maybe 6. And, he got into a lot of different topics from his own experiences to experiences with secret space program and UAPTF, whether he was involved with it or not. But today, there seems to be a lot more controversy than support regarding his involvement. You have literally been awake for about 45 of the last 48 hours, going over this, talking to your sources and everything. Why is the UFO community so up in arms about this potential whistleblower?
Honestly, I don't think it is. When you take a step back from what is it with surfers when they're about to ride their wave? Like, when you're on that wave, like it just feels totally different. And all the news feels, I think, like breaking news. So I think I told you who I spoke with today, and the people I talked with today are such my middle line people of like trust. And it's like, they're not the ones out there being talking heads or speculating or throwing people under a bus or being I got you this moment. So it's like, they're the ones that are wise enough to just step back, let Sands come out however he wants, say what he needs to say when he needs to say it, like experiencers do. And we can support him and move through that. I mean, if it's something that can't be sorted out, then it'll be sorted out eventually, is what I think. We're the home of woo here, right? Like we don't treat experiencers this way. And I don't know a good way for an experiencer to come out to answer your question. Whether it's an everyday person, somebody like Grush, somebody like Sands, I don't know what anybody's line is on what makes them come forward, what makes them want to interview with Grant. Like, I don't know anybody's personal variables, but with that, the citizens disclosure movement marched everybody up to podiums, one after the other, filed through, tell your story, do whatever. Nobody got to stand there and ask questions and be on a personal level with those people in that moment. Twitter spaces are a new thing. So if people can find a voice there and feel like that's a thing they want to do, then that's what they need to do. Ann Jolly gave her outing on the Capitol steps. She got slammed for that. Like, how did we used to do it? Conferences. So you had to know the right person to get at a conference to be able to tell your story, or call into Art Bell. So I don't care that he came out in X spaces. Enough people have already heard his story. So,
I was
where
talking.
were there naysaying, but, before that, if people knew his name for a year, like, why didn't they dig all this stuff up a year ago? Like, I don't know.
I got a statement from somebody within the intelligence community in the United States earlier today, and I'm going to read this. That was sent to me, and I do have permission to read this from my intelligence source, because there's a lot of people with a lot of different sources that are going around right now saying that Sands is full of it. He made up a lot of his stories. My job as a journalist is just to present what I know. Okay. And what I have been able to confirm. And I'm waiting for another 3-letter agency person to get back to me on this subject as well. But I'm just going to read this for the public. This is from one of my inside sources. He said, I learned about Jason Sands through a CIA officer who in turn read about his post in the UAP discussion forum hosted on the R Space server. The server is on the high side, that is accessible by DoD and IC personnel with JWICS, Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communication Systems, accounts. For reference, JWICS is a part of the DoD IIS, the Department of Defense Intelligent Information System. The UAP forum is an official channel on the R Space official server on which the JWIC or JWICS official communication service on the DoD IIS official information system, all under the Pentagon's control and acceptable only by personnel with top secret SCI clearances and compartments. Jason Sands is cleared to that level. Jason Sands' posted story was subject to review by DoD and IC personnel who read the story, which was taken at face value. His story caught the attention of officers of the major intelligence agencies. Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo approved the UAP staffers on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. They knew he was not a Pentagon plant. Chris Mellon facilitated the introduction between Jason Sands and James Fox, who was working on a documentary. Jason Sands wrote to James Fox about his encounter, which at this point was sequestered within the top secret SCI R Space server. James Fox read portions of that correspondence on social media. James Fox inadvertently leaked a photo which showed his name written on a movie clapper, which Fox took down. Subsequently, in preparation for Fox's documentary, Jason Sands submitted his story to the Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review, otherwise known as DOPSR. DOPSR authorized the release of his story from the top secret SCI R Space to the unclassified public domain with one key redaction. Any reference to NHI at Groom Lake had to be stricken. In the meantime, an ODNI contractor who is involved in the UAP issue for the DNI contacted Jason Sands and brought him into a group of UAP witness peers working in the IC. My CIA friend contacted Jason Sands and took his testimony on the top secret SCI phone line. At no time did they consider Jason Sands to be a Pentagon plant. I do not know how Courtney and you, Dave, entered the picture with Jason Sands. You are likely to know more about that. I last year spoke with Jason Sands on a signal call and have been in signal message contact as recently as yesterday. I believe his Blue Being account. I learned about his childhood NHI experiences. Courtney might also know about his childhood experiences. His experiences are his own, and I take them at face value. And that's from an insider.
From your intelligence community source.
Yes.
Yeah. I also have very, very similar. Like, I was in one of these X spaces the other day talking with this new one, AKA, he didn't want to really talk about himself. He was just interested in adding some insight, which I thought was cool. And, there's lots of people like that when you work your sources or talk to your sources outside of ufology and try to find ufology, in other areas. Like, you come across these people, like, I call a group of them like the Area 51 boys. And they're not boys. Like, some of them are in their 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s. They've worked there. They work around there. Even if they're not into UFOs, they all go dumb over Bob Lazar. They're like, I just want to be in a room with them for 5 minutes. I would know everything. I would know. And it's like, yeah, you would know what you know, what you know. You know what I mean? It's like, but then they can walk you through like these processes of like who could even surround witnesses. Like if something happens in one of these areas, like even if it's not UFO related, you would get debriefed. You would give a report. If it was something super secret, you would probably sign that you wouldn't talk about it or say anything. Like, you know, there's all these scenarios that you can run with people to maybe find dots you can connect and ways to help validate a story. So that's the other thing that kind of irked me when I woke up after my 42 seconds of sleep. Was like, what the frick has happened to like this just solid trust in James Fox films? Like all these people that were attached to the phenomenon, did anybody go ape shit bonkers about how hard they were vetted, or did they trust that James Fox puts out solid work with solid people? And now that he's new to including experiencers in his masterpieces of work, why would they think that he doesn't do that with those types of sources either? I mean, we saw how he continues to work with the people in Brazil for Varhania. It's not like he was like, wrapped with you guys, let's just forget about any sort of follow-up. Like he still goes down there. He's still crunching his sources and trying to get more dots. So what do you think he would do with like 1 to 12 to however many whistleblowers that could possibly, you know, be in this shuffle card deck that's going on? Like you can never control that many people. It's like herding cats. B, I don't think anybody's getting paid for this film, so they don't have like agents or people managing how they do a film for the first time, or you know what I mean? Like this is all just, I think, too much.
Why do you, with 2 minutes to go here, why do you think that so many people are disagreeing or not believing in Jason Sands?
Because I think everybody is stuck on thinking that there's only this one path to disclosure and one narrative with that, and only a few select that can get us there. Like, and those same people have acknowledged, you know, like the shoulders of the giants that they've stood on to get to the point where they're at. Well, what I don't understand is it's not like people stopped going to those giants to push for disclosure or to help them tell their story or to help them figure out their own weirdness or find their safe spaces. Like, I don't know. I don't think people understand how ufology operates outside of Twitterverse. I think that's part of it too. Like, I don't know.
Well, I think part of the frustration too is there's a lot more trust me bro type of information. There's not a lot of evidence. Then when you throw in, you know, to play devil's advocate here for a second, when you throw in the alleged 20 in back and the fact that he did stumble over a couple of things. At one point, he said he was part of UAPTF. Then he came out and corrected himself, saying I was not part of UAPTF. I think that's where a lot of people tend to disbelieve because people are looking for anybody to trip, you know?
Right. And well, that's even what I mean. I was talking with, here, I'll give it a shout out, Patrick from Vetted. Like, you vetted some stuff and spewed some gossip, but he and I hashed it out and talked on the phone today. And then I spoke with Courtney about it too.
Hold that thought because we're going to go to break here. Nicole Sackage filling in for Courtney Marcassani on UFO Court. Spaced Out Radio continues after this.
Is Spaced Out Radio, and your host, Dave Scott.
Fun times. Fun times. Nice hat, by the way.
I thought it was time to dust off the old woo hat.
Well,
I I think maybe you got to bring it up in a discussion, and I fall asleep to your show all the time now. I try to stay up for you and Courtney,
I
and
take that as a compliment.
I know you do. I try real hard. It's just, um, it's so soothing. I fall asleep to you guys, and then I wake up thinking about stuff. And you guys might have talked about this, uh, unhidden. Unhidden's new definition of woo or official. I don't know. They're trying to like stamp it like Webster's or something. And yeah, so I just thought, hey, I have a woo hat. Let's get out the good old spaced out radio, land of the free woo, home of the brave woo.
Pixie Lara, I used to have the woo hats on the website, but they didn't sell, so I took them off.
This is an exclusive vintage, probably 4 of a kind woo hat here, folks. Check eBay now.
Right?
Dirty
Right?
Phil tries to get my own the night hat too. Is that one still out there?
You know what? They took those hats off, and I loved those hats. Yeah, and you know what? I gave mine away. I don't even have one anymore.
Have you noticed my growing art collection that I have?
Yes, of birds. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It may have to do with the aviary. I'm pretty sure it does. Well, attorney to EBEs, I would like you to be in Reno, but I understand. Hopefully you can make it, my man. Good times tonight. There it is. I miss that hat. That's a comfortable ball cap, that one.
These both are, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
You remember when you started your swag shop? And I was all like, dude, don't do those cheap ass shitty t-shirts that everybody fucking hates. Oops, I'm sorry. I F-bombed it like I
the bird
F-bombed it like I was talking about Dwayne The Rock Johnson's black man panties.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, so Henry Cavill and Dwayne The Rock Johnson kind of equal Dr. McDreamy Steamy.
Am I the only one who thinks Henry Cavill has either an odd-shaped alien gray head or he's got giant hair that just needs a good cutting?
Girls have that phrase where they're like, look at my eyes, look at my eyes. Like, ladies, they look directly at those crazy blue eyes and they can't see the rest of this head. And if they're not looking at those crazy blue eyes, it's this. So, sorry.
He's got a big head.
I don't often ogle men. You know that. I'm pretty fair about that.
He's got like a 4-inch Adam's apple, too.
That's all right. You know what they say about big Adam's apples?
No.
You're definitely a man.
All right. All right. We got about 1 minute here.
We own the night, Dave. I know.
I miss that hat.
Honestly, like Filthy has like 6 pictures of himself in this hat because he kept stealing it from me like the whole time at Vegas, the original first Vegas. And here, since I'm trying on hats, if anybody from 1980s Hillsboro, my hometown, watches this show, they would recognize this hat. Ye old parents' clothing store. It kind of looks
All
like a Super Mario Brother hat on my head.
Totally. Oh my God. It's terrible. Hold on right there because we're going to get going here. Thank you, T-Bone with a hat trick, CS, Deb, Big Dog, and Rob for the super chats. Here we go, everybody. Here's the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight, talking whistleblowers on UFO Court. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate you tuning us on in. Want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. We're on also every major podcast network you can think of. Yes, including Spotify, iHeartRadio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, and check out our swag. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Nicole Sakic filling in for Courtney Marcassani on UFO Court tonight. And the big story of the weekend, Jason Sands coming in as a latest whistleblower. Many people are thinking this is highly controversial, that his resume is suspect, and a website for a law firm. Nicole, let's get right into it. I mean, this law firm, I'll get you to unmute your mic if you don't mind. This law firm that he apparently runs, that website was bad. It was really bad. And I don't know who put that up there, but you could tell it was not very real.
Yeah, we do know who put that up there. Somebody was kind enough to like do that IP address thing of who created it and when it was created. And I mean, the person who sent it to me was like, what's this hack job? Like, I mean, like, if you were even throwing a website together, like talking your grandma through it on the phone, the same grandma that can't even operate the phone that she's talking on, like she could have made a better website than that. So, I mean, I don't know. Where were all the people going, that's a hack job, like that's totally fake, this is propaganda to spin against them, like, I mean, we got pre-warned that Grush's autism was going to be laid out for everybody to possibly tear apart. So I don't understand the dynamic of the different people that come forward and how they're treated. I was appalled after that 42 minutes of sleep too, because, well, let's just say it, like Wilson Davis documents, right? Like, Dave, you were along for that ride too. You rode that wave, like you helped break that wave. Everybody that came out to get those out and to push them forward, and how they were floated and who had them and who didn't. And then once they did come out, so many people, what was the hate then? Can't validate Eric Davis. He has no credibility. He can't this, he can't that. Why would you trust him? And for me to see the messages that he made in Hoffman's Facebook group, that's private, not private, I was honestly just disgusted. Because I defended Eric Davis. I did it on your show, and I think I defended him on Jimmy Church's show. And so
I agree.
that's where like the trust me bro stuff, everybody has their trust me bros, and everybody has to in this, because we're just information traders or artists or whatever it is when it comes down to it. I'm just a cook. I've been called a gossip all week, just like my good old hater from 8 years ago just still likes to, say whatever. I'm not a researcher. I haven't done anything. I'm like Ryan Sprague.
Well, I think the idea behind Jason Sands and what is going on is I think what really tipped the scales for a lot of people was the fact that not only did he say his alien encounter was with a blue skinned being, okay, but the 20 and back, and a lot of people correlated that towards. And here we go with another Corey Good. We finally exposed Corey Good for the fraudulent talks that he had been having over the years. And now here we go again with another person, which in
Have
respect,
we have we exposed Corey Good though? I mean, my defense with the 20 and back has always been like, it's not whatever. It doesn't have to be called that. Like, that's been a branding of sort of whatever. But it's always like there's other elements in ufology. The little kid part, just all of it. We don't have to get into the specifics and the details. So, I mean, if you just want to rattle off some, like Kramer, Basago, Good, you just had Lori Fenton on, and what were people asking her about that night? Super soldiers, time travelers, and nobody wants to say 20 and back. And then the ones that float out that won't don't want to be public at all, are just terrified and don't understand what they've been through. They're the ones where you say, and you hear like Sands said it. I was forced into something and I don't know what it was. It scares me, and this is not verbatim. It's not what he said. And then he flat out said it. It kind of that's what it was, but that's not what we called it. Lots of them say that. Like, Lorian said so much in her chat with you, in her last interview. And I'll refer to her because I know a lot of these people have found her over the years that she's worked. Like, so, and the blue bean thing. It's like my favorite thing in the world when somebody says, I've never heard of a case like that. I've never heard of somebody say a blue bean. Well, get out your little AI talk bots, or at least your old school Google machine, or talk to somebody who's been in ufology for 30 years or more. And there's blue bean stories out the wahoozies, like blue babies, crystal children, every shade of blue, blue beans. Yes, the blue avians. It's absurd sometimes. I've heard so much woo now at this point. I mean, high strangeness. That no, I'm not going to just pick apart somebody's crazy stories. Like, that's what I do, is listen to experiencers. Why do you think Grant and I are so successful and talk to so many? And there are safe spaces like that. And then those people will go on camera or join a rabbit hole space and appear with 15 other people that they've bonded with and feel like they can share their crazy story that they don't understand in a more public setting. So I don't know. Bold moves are, that's an experiencer thing too. You get your calling or your awakening or your moment. And, what if he thinks that there's never going to be another shot at hearings like Grush got? Like, what if he thinks this is his moment? Like, that's also a pattern too. Lots of people do that. Like, What should we wait for? Deathbed confession? We don't like that way to come out. That gets shredded.
Yep,
I'm
we
just,
don't.
I don't know. I was very proud and like proud of what I saw in that X space, of how it had this flow to it. Everybody was like chill with it. And then, it turned so ugly within 24 hours. I was proud of ufology that it maybe had a moment in this slump or whatever that's going on. And then it all turned so stupid, ugly so fast for no reason at all. Just have some manners, have some respect or decency, have some patience. Shame
Do
on
you?
you, Eric Davis. Like, honestly, shame on you, Eric Davis. I almost hope the Wilson Davis documents are just fucking fake as shit now. I do. I'll say it. I do. I hope they're fake.
All right. Moving on here. Eric Davis, obviously a scientist who came out and basically said on X today that he doesn't believe Sand's story at all, and that's the kind of the anger about it. But I mean, I understand your point of view. I totally understand your point of view regarding the experiencer, because as an experiencer myself, there's an emotional tie that tends to go along with what's going on. And the majority of people who are in ufology really haven't had the experience happen to them. They're here because they're interested in this topic. And it's very tough in order to draw the line of where reality is for a lot of people, because they don't seem to understand a lot of the reality that experiencers go through. As an experiencer yourself, when you sit there and look into it and deep dive into it the way you do with your research, you know, can we look at Sands as somebody who is being thrown under the bus? Because we haven't heard anybody really defend him yet, outside of certain IC people
Yeah,
who
yeah, you
don't
have.
put their name forward.
Yeah, I have. I have for sure. I mean,
But I think
I'm not, I talk about, we all have our trust me bros, and people that are close to me know who I talk to or who I would go to directly if I had a question for them. And so that's what I've done. So I'm satisfied at the moment. And not to just keep on bagging on Eric Davis, but so he trusts James Fox enough to put him in a film, or at least be a part of the program, because if on yet another Twitter one, if you zoom in on the whiteboard with the black writing, the very last names at the end of the whiteboard, it says President Obama, President Bush, Jake Sullivan, Eric Davis, and Hal Puthoff. I mean, I don't know. It's just that it didn't look like autographs, like they'd walked in and signed it. It looked like a storyboarded out or a blocked segment of something. So, I mean, if Eric Davis has a part in this film, like, he trusts James Fox to tell his story in a certain light, like, why doesn't that extend? I mean, granted, they may not know everybody's ins and outs of being in a film together, but that's what I mean. This, like, doesn't make sense why you would say something
well, I
in
think
a
it's because
place like that.
it's not the usual suspects who've come in. And I mean no disregard to these people when I say usual suspects. We haven't heard Grush, we haven't heard Elizondo, we haven't heard Mellon, and it seems like those
No,
three
we can talk
those
about
three
that. Yeah. Well, Mellon put out his extra signal stuff today. So, he was probably busy doing that. Like,
or is it because maybe Sands didn't follow the protocol?
you and Courtney have talked about that several times, I think, throughout the news report, that not everybody follows the protocol or goes just through Lou Crew or goes right to Arrow, and even on Vetted, like that's what I was starting to say, like Vetted has covered this a little bit, and we're going to talk jump rooms and time travels and 21 and back and all that stuff. And he's going to vet that because, yeah, he'd never even heard the term jump room before. So that'll be a fun episode.
Wonder
And
who tipped him off to that, Nicole.
oh my God, it was Grant's hook. Like, it's got all that mystery and intrigue and people floating in pajamas and Tim Taylor. So, there is other stuff. I had to play catch up on this Chris Mellon signal stuff. So, you read the thing from your intelligence community thing. Like, it kind of sounds like maybe Mellon would be one of those people that just waits for James' film to come out or play it cool. Like, I don't know. He was like the only saving grace of the Canadian debacle that blew up for me. Like, Mellon was a delight. I thought he was very helpful. He spoke very kindly to Grant and about the topic with the MP8s and language and stuff like that. Grant and I see a little different on that. He thinks Mellon wanted to push the threat narrative and that was a poison pill. And yeah, but he seemed genuine in that. And so I think he would probably be genuine with anybody. Like, I haven't known him to throw an experiencer under the bus yet with the ones that have creeped out towards him. And he said that people find him and want to share their story. So I don't know. There's class, and then there's people that put the ass in class, like Philip J. Class, one of our biggest debunker skeptics that cursed our entire community. So I've said that over and over again. Be better than Philip Class. Be skeptical, be hard, be tough, ask questions, but be better than Philip Class. He personally attacked people. Like, be better than that.
Well, with 4 minutes to go, and we have Chris Mellon bringing out a private signal conversation. Yes, there are names that are redacted on there, but this is in response as a shot over the bow after his personal signal conversations were released via FOIA request that John Greenwald from the Black Vault was able to secure.
Honestly, how cool is that? Like, think about how many people you talk to on Signal that are like wrapped up in this garbage in some way, shape, or form. Like, let's FOIA everybody. Like, just do it. Get everybody's signals. Do it. Why not? Give them all up. Aren't we all sharing the same sources? And it could be an echo chamber anyways. Let's see what everybody give up your secret chat groups. It could be fun. I'm sorry. Is that catastrophic disclosure?
Yes, let's just pull the string on it right now. Pull the string on it right now.
I don't know. Do you have any source right now that you just totally gave up their name? Do you think that it would just ruin their world and it would crash everything down and they'd hate you for the rest of their life?
I have a couple.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple. And you're like, who?
No, I never push stuff like that publicly.
Well, I think, though, the problem that you have with your sources, especially in this field, is you don't know who they're all talking to. It's not like when I was a journalist in Vancouver and I would have, say, an athlete, a hockey player, give me an inside scoop on something. I knew they weren't telling 6 or 10 other reporters. I know they were coming to me in confidence. Whereas in the
Right.
UFO world, there doesn't seem to be that real set of confidence that they have and trust that they have in one particular person.
Right. Well, in journalism, are you supposed to really trust your source like that?
Depends on the source.
I mean, you have to like trust that like relationship of give and take,
You,
that
you build the relationship for sure, right? And you build that by not throwing somebody under the bus. You keep their name out of the story. I mean, I had that happen where I would have players coming up to me and saying, "I can't wait to get traded out of here. I'm done with this area, right? I'm done with
yeah,
this coach,
but,
or whatever."
but I mean, and I know sports can be like cutthroat and petty and, things like that, just like any grouping or whatever. But I mean, we are in the land of conspiracy, OG conspiracy theories here. So, I mean, do we really trust anybody? Like, even by like most trusted sources, like I have such moments of doubt with them sometimes. And no, I don't like having a source where I feel like I'm their solo venue. That's where I feel like wheeled and dealed or that I'm being spun. So, I mean, so that's why you share your source or connect them with other people that can help them further, like that's what I don't understand, why everybody's so guarded in our small community. If we're trying to work this to a larger spectrum outside of our world, then why aren't we sending each other to each other just because of the petty junior high stuff? Like the 500 Hydra disclosure can't get along when they share a body. Like,
That is a question for another day. Nicole, thank you so much for filling in on Spaced Out Radio tonight on UFO Court for Courtney Marcassani. Very much appreciate it.
always a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Ah, yes, and your woo hat is absolutely fantastic. It
Thank
really
you.
is. As we say hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your car, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X. Hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night.
Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. Woohoo! Thanks for making me edit. Shame. Your mic is muted. You always mute your mic.
It's when I'm overly tired, I can't control the chef programmed cussing mouth. Sorry.
I'm like, what the hell? Come
I
on.
know. It's Dwayne Rock Johnson's man panties that just always make me drop F-bombs. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Dwayne.
Just gonna
Rock.
drop the elbow on you.
And I don't know. He probably has a wife. I don't like to talk about married men that I ogle. So sorry. Sorry, wives.
You still got a big head.
I do. I actually
Not
don't.
you, him.
I tell you who has a big head. I think I bagged on him enough tonight, honestly. And honestly, he has a mustache. Well, maybe he doesn't anymore. No, I'm not talking about Dodie's mustache. That thing used to be magnificent. Like, I don't know why he got rid of his trademark.
He's got to bring the mustache back.
I don't know. I don't know. You know how you are when you get a new look? You don't go back.
I know. I don't have to agree with it.
So, what I did want to cover, that Melon tweet or post. So, okay, he can use that's a forum for news, but you can't like live mouth it on X. So, anyways, more news from X, from Melon, Mr. Melon. Yeah. So they brought up the document from the 1950s. It talked about Kingman crash. That's J-Rod, dude. Like, that's J-Rod the alien.
Mhm.
What else was on that in my tired brain? Read it to me. Read me the slide. Did you get it?
I got it here. Blank and I are making huge progress getting into the CR program. He plans to meet with you at some point. The blank would be slack-jawed if they found out what we know. And then a bunch of redacted stuff. Right now, we haven't gone that far back. We are dealing with the recovered UAP that landed in Kingman, Arizona in the 1950s. We're vacuuming up info as blank gets read in. We know the management structure and security control systems and ownership of the CR, which would be crash retrieval, by the way. And we know who recovers landed or crashed UAPs under what authorities. We also know that a still highly classified memo by a secretary of the USAF in the 1950s is still in effect to maintain the cover on UAPs. We also know that the SES-2, who's the Air Force gatekeeper, name redacted but provided to Congress.
And this was circa 2020, right? Very interesting. Like, who do you think he's talking to? Who do you think the conversation is between? Just a wild guess.
You know what's
Anybody?
interesting on this article on his Substack is it was written with him and his son.
I noticed that. Like, generational melon action going on.
Who do I think Mellon was talking to?
I have it on good trust me bro authority that it's not Eric Davis. I'm such a gossip. So who do you think it is? Can't be Eric Davis. We ruled him out. So you remember all the segments that me and Grant did that we called rumors and gossip? And who
Yes.
our guests were. And I think like 99% of that gossip and rumors wasn't. So I don't know. You know, I'm all like gossip and rumors and gossip. I'm pointing that out because that's one of the attacks that Courtney and myself slightly have been fired at. You're not researchers or journalists, you're just gossips. My sources are better
Observational
than your sources.
excrement.
Oh my God. Don't even start with that. Don't even start with that. You know, my first list that I was included in have like, they were so like bomb. I was like, oh my God, look at all these people that I'm being hated on with together. And now it's whittled down to like me and Ryan Sprague and like 4 other people that he calls the keyboard researchers. And I'm just like, you know, actually, the person that sent it to me and was like, this is so terrible. Like, why does he just do this every, it's like his Manzi cycle for
Hey,
his.
it's my turn coming up next. He's hammered on you. It's
I
my turn.
know, and that's what this person, you know, and I discuss. It's like there's this menstrual cycle with even who he chooses to gripe about and then who he flips it, which is all hail Kevin Randall. All hail. I'll just repeat everything Kevin Randall says. I will. Well, what he called you UFO excrement. Well, I call that UFO vodamus.
UFO excrement.
UFO mouth vomit. When all you do is just read Kevin Randall and then regurgitate what he says.
There might still be
And
white,
I love Kevin Randall. I like his work. I respect it. It's not even a dig on him, but
very
you know,
tight mustache too. Very tight.
I mean, since I'm
Kevin
on,
Randall rocks the lip
yeah,
blade like Don rocks a red tie.
you brought up the red ties.
Mm-hmm.
That's the I mean business tie
Oh yeah.
for sure. What else? I wanted to ask Don about that. I think I did in that super secret chat group we have.
We're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your
Hey,
Yeah.
Dave, I have this party that I'm going to invite 50 people to, but I'm going to tell all 50 people they can't talk about it.
I'm lost right now.
I know. It's just my lack of sleep talking and my sassiness. Usually it's Grant that provokes me into bear poking and cage rattling, but honestly, I don't like it that Courtney's getting picked on. I don't like it at all. I think some people think it's easy to push chicks around in this field.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would totally agree with that.
Yep.
You know, and that's why I think we're starting to see a lot more people pull away from Twitter and X, or Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, because of the attitude, the smugness of people hiding behind their fingers on their phone. That's why I don't think you see a lot of the bigger names really associating with X anymore.
Well, I think that's why there are these moments that are emerging in X spaces the way they are, where it's people's voices, you know, like speaking to each other. It might still be like your little dot icon or whatever. And I know you can do video feed and things like that, but I do think it's that voice to voice interaction. It feels like a collective call into Art Bell, you know, and yeah, I mean, you know, I've even before our hiatus of a year, you know, what I would say about dipping into these Twitter spaces, it's like, oh man, that was cool for like 5 minutes. And then it turned into all this stuff I don't understand. And I hate Joe Merja for dragging me into Twitter. Like, you know, I went through all that stuff. And like, for me, hating on Twitter as much as I do and having to accept that people are using it as a news source, then you have to use the tools that are at hand. And I like some of these Twitter spaces now. They have like evolved from this, like, I don't know, mudslinging like playground. I mean, let's face it, we created UFO Twitter. So what we just saw, I think, erupt in some of those groups and Twitter spaces over the last couple weeks. I mean, we've seen that in UFO Twitter before. They just didn't do it with their voices in a space. They were and like chewing each other out on pushing that little voice thing, like 1 minute at a time. Like, we saw that play out too. That's what made me go, dude, I don't want to be a young gun. I don't want to play in the Twitter sandbox. Like, now I'm more comfortable at it because it's not, I don't know. All the mean ones are never as mean as people think if you just try to talk to people and be a respectful human being. Like, God, keep getting called the mom of ufology. Like, it's not my momness coming out. It's just, where are all the experiencers that get slapped with that, like, oneness and compassion? Like, it's like, oh, wait, that's all the non-experiencers running their mouth. Like, I don't know.
I hear you. On that note, we're going to shut things down for tonight because it is time for me to get editing. So, Nicole, thank you for filling in for Courtney.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'll try not to cuss because Courtney would be disappointed in me. I know your audience loves it when you edit on my behalf. So you're welcome, Dave. Any night. You're welcome, space travelers.
All right. Big thank you to T-Bone with a hat trick, Bigfoot Rob, Big Dog, Debaruni, and CS for the super chats. Tomorrow night on the show, Mark D'Antonio will join us to talk about UFOs, UFO videos, how to tell what's real in the sky and what's just Venus. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Take care.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.